You're gonna see some serious shit.
It is the future. The year 2015. Okay, it's not as cool as we were promised, but it's not that different really. Instead of Jaws 19, we get Terminator Jenny CCs. It's the same thing really. We need to make a future for ourselves. A future where film lovers make film podcasts about why they love film. Where we stay positive no matter what the next batshit crazy Fantastic Four reboot rumor is. Come on guys, Star Wars and Mad Max are coming back. Brad Bird's got another movie out, Pixar have too. Stick with us folks and you'll always see the bright side of movies. Don't mind the title, it's just ironic. Welcome to Movie Moan 2015! So I'm Phil, that's Jamie, you've already heard him, doesn't matter who we are, we've got a very, very special guest, a guest that if you're a long-time listener of the show, you have heard before, but we've been very, very delighted every time he comes back on. It adds a bit of class, a bit of legitimacy to our little humble show. Will you please welcome filmmaker, producer, master of the arts, I'm trying to think of other titles, maybe they'll come to me later, Mr. Roger Lay Jr. Hello, sir, how the hell are you?
I'm doing great. I'm very glad to be back. It's been a while. I was just thinking, it's been over a year since we did this, so it feels right, man. It's about time we did it again. Thanks for having me.
It's just so...
Welcome back. This is great that you guys are up and running again with the weekly show, right? So congratulations. Now, keep doing it. Don't take another year break.
Oh, I don't know, man. I have so much pressure to do those Superman shows again. I gotta make those again, and I don't know. If I could do this for a living, of course, which is what everybody dreams of, then maybe I could turn out even more. But right now, certainly, we've no intentions to go away. We're going to be doing this all the way up, at least until Star Wars comes out, and it's so...
You have to, yeah, at least till Star Wars.
Of course.
It's good you guys are back.
But it's so, and maybe, hey, if they are going to release a Star Wars movie a year, then I guess we might keep going. Who the heck knows?
They won't do it one a year.
Well, I wondered what Roger...
The following year, you'll have the first, what are they calling? The spin-off movies or the in-between movies, So you have easily you have 6 more movies, you know?
Let's
So you
try
got
3.
6 more years, guys.
Gee, me and Jamie haven't got sick of each other's company yet, so I don't see any reason why we would.
Ever.
In the next 6 years, no. I mean, well, I guess that's as good a segue as anyway. We'll start, Roger, just by asking, I mean, I always love asking, you know, Roger how he feels about what's going on in the world of movies right now and how saturated or not he feels the market is. I remember the last time we spoke that we were talking, it was just before summer 2014, and we were talking about the movies that were about to come out, and correct me if I'm wrong, it didn't seem like we were excited about that many of them, and with good reason, I think, in retrospect. But going into this summer, are you feeling pretty much the same way?
I guess I am. I mean, there's nothing, you know, I was really excited about Chappie, and now I'm hearing all these bad reviews, and I'm like, what the hell, man? I mean, because Neil Bloomkamp, you know, District 9 was a really great movie, at least in my opinion. And then he had the follow-up film, Elysium, I guess, wasn't that great. So we were all thinking, hey, Chappie's the one, man. He's gonna, you know, turn the ship around on this one, and now it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. So I'm a little disappointed. I mean, I'm still going to go see it. Have you guys seen it? Have you seen any screenings or anything?
Nope.
Right, not. My local theater isn't even getting it. That shows you how little faith they have. And I know, I thought the same thing. I was like, God damn.
It just seems like it's the age of Marvel and all these superhero movies, and the standalone sci-fi film that was about big ideas, you know, that's kind of going away, or it's not as relevant anymore. We don't get as many of those as we used to. It just seems like everything now more than ever is, you know, part of whether it's the Marvel slate of pictures or the, you know, other superhero things. Now you have DC coming out with, like, I think 8 movies in the next 2 years, you know. And that's all great. I mean, I'm a huge comic book fan. I grew up reading all these books and with all these characters, but you know, I miss those, you know, larger than life sci-fi films about ideas. You know, we haven't had one of those in a long time. So,
well, I mean, I think Tom Cruise has been giving it a fair go. I mean, that's what I liked about what he seemed to be doing recently. He seemed to be like, it seemed like every year he was going to bring out one of these pulpy science fiction kind of stories.
I liked Edge of Tomorrow.
Oh yeah, I loved it.
I thought it was probably one of my favorite sci-fi movies in the last couple of years, so I really enjoyed that. But, you know, there's not a lot of those, you know, whereas years ago we were getting at least 2 or 3 of those a year. So, you know, that's kind of my take on it, being a heavy sci-fi fan and someone who reads a lot of science fiction novels, you know. I mean, look, Ender's Game was a huge disappointment to everyone, and that was, you know, that was one of those sacred, you know, books for us sci-fi fans, you know, and we waited so long for that one, so, and no one cared. So,
I cared. I enjoyed it, actually. I remember I saw it in an empty theater.
I cared. I went and saw it. On opening weekend. Rob Burnett and I and a bunch of people went over and saw it at the Man's Chinese Theater in IMAX, and we enjoyed it. We thought it was a bold, brave effort, you know, but it just came and went. It just disappeared, and there was something about it that I haven't yet quite been able to identify, but there was a feeling like we enjoyed it. We thought it was great. We liked some of the decisions that were made, but after you left the theater, the film didn't really stay with you the way the book stays with you for the rest of your life. And we can't pinpoint that. I can't figure out, because it's not a bad movie. It's not even like a horrible movie or something I hated. It's one of those things where you don't feel that passionate about it as you felt about the book. And it kind of bothered me, because I kept thinking for days and days, like, well, what's wrong with it? What is it? What's the issue? You know, but I couldn't figure it out. And I think the fact that it did come and go and people just didn't care about it, people didn't get behind it.
I just think it had a very bad last 5 minutes. That's all it is. It just literally just ends. It stops. It doesn't even end. It stops. Literally.
What makes you appreciate something like Interstellar? Nolan doing as you said, like a one-shot science fiction movie, like the way most movies should be one-shot. You know, I'm certainly happy to hear that Singer is doing. What's that book? He's adapting some book.
Oh yeah, I read that today.
I was so fucking pumped to read that. I was like, oh, finally.
The Star's My Destination? No.
Oh God,
no. The Harsh Mistress.
The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. Yeah.
I'm like, oh yes, you know.
The Stars of My Destination, that's like one of the great unmade films. They've been trying to make that for decades.
They'll make it.
Didn't I read something about that recently? Wasn't there an announcement about someone trying to make it again? Because I know that's made the rounds for decades, that film, and it never came together. But I think I read something about it again.
I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to, and like this will happen eventually. Someone's gonna end up redoing Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I mean, you guys know I had a very good friendship with Ray Bradbury for years. I made his last film. Did you ever know?
Chrysalis,
did I ever
yeah.
tell you that? Yeah, that was
No.
Ray's last film, and we were getting ready to make a movie called Leviathan after that, which was his retelling of Moby Dick, but in outer space, basically. A space comet, a space entity blinds the captain of a spaceship, and he becomes obsessed with this thing and to try and harness it, So it's not that different from Ahab and the Whale, because Ray had written the screenplay to the Moby Dick film that John Huston directed, and Ray was very young at the time. It was one of his first experiences with the film world, and he just had a horrible time. And with John Huston, John was very harsh to him, and to the point where Ray wrote a short story called The Banshee about this creature, and he said that John Huston inspired The Banshee. If you read The Banshee, read that story, and just remember what I'm telling you. It's John Huston inspired that because of the horrible experiences he had with John Huston. So he said, well, at some point I'm going to revisit this story, but on my own terms, and he wrote a novella called Leviathan 99. Which is basically that. It's the same motif, the same mechanics of Moby Dick, but the way he wanted to tell the story, and now moving it out to outer space. And we were working on developing that early on, and it was at very early stages of the project. And then he was ill and went to the hospital, came out of the hospital, and then passed away shortly after. So Ray is someone who I adore and was a mentor to me, and I would love to see some of his works come back to the screen, but done properly with respect for them, and not, kind of changing them up and turning them into something they're not, and forgetting why Ray wrote what he was writing, or why he dealt with things the way he dealt with them on the paper, on the page, But it's Ray writes metaphors. Ray doesn't really write things that you read and you visualize it like a screenplay where you go, okay, this is a set piece, this is an action piece, this is an action sequence. You have to really look further and look through all the layers. But Fahrenheit would be great, and I know Mel Gibson, and back in the day there was a screenplay that Ray loved by the director of Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, Frank Darabont. Yeah, Robert was telling us about that. Like,
yeah.
at one point, Darabont was going to direct it, and I almost had a heart attack.
Yeah, I was there when you heard that, yeah.
And Ray
Really?
loved that screenplay. Ray loved it. I remember being in his house talking to him about it, and a few years before he passed away, I think 2 or 3 years before he passed away, he produced a play in Pasadena here in LA of Fahrenheit. He produced the play again, and he invited me, and I was sitting in the audience next to him, and afterwards we were talking about it, and he said, if Frank could get his film made, I would be so happy, because he really, really loved the screenplay, loved the relationship he had with Frank Darabont, but it just never came together. So hopefully it happens at some point. I love Ray's work. I'd love to revisit them at some point. I'd love to do something again based on his work. But when he passed away, it just felt weird to just keep working on that stuff without him.
If
Maybe.
television, the way television is nowadays, where you can do stuff on Netflix and stuff, you could actually do a limited series for like HBO or Netflix or something. That might be the route.
It's got to be a medium that allows you, the filmmaker or whoever's making this thing, to really take the time with the words and everything that Ray is building, because Ray's stuff is not, a 90-minute action-packed sci-fi movie. You're never, you guys can watch a Sound of Thunder and you'll realize that it just doesn't work. You can't.
No, thanks.
You can't take what he's written and adapt it in that fashion, So, but his stuff is fantastic. I adore the guy. I adore his work. So I would love to see that happen at some point. It'd be amazing.
I think it proves that there are still, now you tell me this, guys, maybe I'm being very, very naive, I don't know, but there are still so many great unmade science fiction stories from a literary source to happen. There are a couple like Dune. Every time someone says they're going to remake Dune, I say, yeah, whatever, and it never happens, because I think you can make a great movie out of Dune. I just don't think you can make a commercially successful one. I think that's the crux with it. But I just wonder still how much of this goes back to John Carter. Like, I just wonder how many studio execs will literally just say pass to this day because of what happened with that movie. If movie can't succeed.
Yeah, but it didn't succeed because they purposely killed it. I mean, I'm
They
sorry,
destroyed it. I mean, they did.
They
destroy
purposely
it. That's-
they purposely destroyed it. They
It was
Disney
the
of
worst.
all
It was
places.
they butchered that campaign, that release, everything about it, and it seemed like
They
they didn't care. I mean, I've heard there's a great book, by the way. If you guys haven't read it, I think it's called John Carter versus Hollywood.
I've heard about this.
That book is amazing, just fascinating. I got it and I read it like in a couple of nights. And the guy just basically tracks the whole development of the film. You know, even going back to when John McTiernan was going to do it, and I think at one point it was Favreau who was doing it. But then, really the meat of the book is when Disney, gives the green light to what's his name? Name escapes me right now. Who directed
Andrew
it?
Strand.
Andrew, yeah, and it just follows everything, every development, every issue they had with studio executives, everything, the whole dreaded scenario where they didn't know how to market it. Then the theories, I think there's a theory that when they knew they were getting Star Wars, they just didn't really care.
That's the one I buy, actually. That's the one that I actually stick with.
And then on Monday morning after the movie opened, how I think they fired a bunch of the people in their marketing group, and they were trying to place blame all over the department. So it's a really fascinating book. I have it somewhere here in my office. But I believe it. Oh, there it is. Here it is. It's called John Carter and the Gods of Hollywood. The true story of what went wrong with Disney's John Carter and why Edgar Rice Burroughs' original superhero isn't dead yet. It's by Michael Sellers. It's an amazing book. It came out, like a year and a half ago.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now pause while you click add to shopping cart. Now, we will move on just at this point just to talk about one science fiction entity, series, call it what you will, that just will not die. Now, I haven't quite reached the level of apathy that I have with Terminator. Terminator I've just given up on. I'll watch it. I will give the movie a fair shake.
Didn't you hear
That's
Arnold
the one that
is...
should actually die.
Arnold, guys, did you hear Arnold signed on for part 6 already? It's totally going to get made.
I just don't pollute this show with that garbage that they spew. Please, let's.
Arnold was on 2.5 Men in the final episode. So.
Oh, we have to go into that? Do we have to? We get Roger for 1 hour, and you want to talk about that? Is that really what's happening?
No, my point being is that the man needs money.
If we're going to make it another 6 years, Jamie, you got a lot to learn about what we talk about, what we don't talk about.
You gotta give him a list. You gotta give him a list of the topics that are completely banned from here until your final episode.
Which hopefully will be a little bit better than that finale. I only heard about it. I didn't see it, but I only heard about it from Jamie's tweets. But apparently he liked it. Not very much. Anyway, never mind about that. So, Alien. Now, of course, what's been happening with the project in terms of when it first initially exploded with the concept art that Neil Bloomkamp made publicly available, then turned into a debate about, well, hang on, can you even legally do that? Which then turned to, yeah, of course, people do that all the time. Which then turned to, holy crap, he actually got the job. I thought you couldn't do that. And some people saying, no, people do that all the time. You can literally just write a script for something that you don't have the rights to or don't have permissions for, and you can use that.
You write it as a spec. Most people get away by saying they do it as a writing sample, but sometimes if you have a little nicely crafted plan, it turns out, like it did for him with concept art, because I don't think there's a script. It's just concept art.
Right now, that's exactly right. Now let's take it with a grain of salt, folks. Not to be cynical about this, but let's be honest. We have a series right now that obviously Fox still believes is worth a lot and they want to do something with. They just don't have a clue what to do with it. They can't put the whole future of the Alien series on a Prometheus 2 if that is happening. I don't know. I think the last time we talked...
Don't make it.
I agree. I absolutely agree. So I assume that they won't, in which case what we're going to have is this instead. Alien... Well, no, it'll be Alien : something again. It can't be Alien 5 because, of course, apparently Alien 3 and Alien 4 don't exist anymore. Now, personally, I think this opens up a very interesting debate. Now, let's just say, for argument's sake, and I know this to be true because I'm one of them, And it's partly because of the way I grew up, folks. When I was a kid, I saw Aliens on television when it debuted in the 94, 95, whenever it debuted on UK television. And then I saw the first film, Alien. And I wanted to see Alien 3. It had come out on video. And my parents wouldn't let me. They just told me I'd be too disappointed. So they refused to let me see it, which was interesting. And I said, but I saw Batman Returns. I can handle something different. They said, it's not the same thing. They kill everybody. They kill all your favourites, Phil. You won't like it. So for the longest time, I didn't see Alien 3. When I actually finally saw the damn thing, believe it or not, it was 2003 when Charles de Lauzirika first brought out the quadrilogy box set, and I saw the long version, and I liked it. I thought, hey, it is what it is. I just, by that time, I guess I was just mature enough that I accepted it. Yeah, was it a kick in the balls if you're invested in Aliens, my second favourite film? Of course it was, but I just thought, okay, there it is. And then I saw Resurrection and I said, okay, it's just a trilogy. That's it. I forget that film. It's Alien to Alien 3 and I'm fine with that. Well, now we have Mr. Blomkamp saying, no, Alien 3 didn't happen. Forget it. You're going to have my film, and that's going to be the official sequel. So before we talk about anything else, I'm just very interested to hear, first from Roger, what do you feel about this position of, you know, a filmmaker coming in, potentially you liking a film in a series, and then him saying, well, no, it doesn't exist anymore, mine's the official sequel. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, to be fair, I did read, and I may be wrong, but I thought I read now that he's not really wiping the slate, that he is saying that this is actually going to exist after the, you know, the Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection. I think that's the last thing I read. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case, but, I mean, technically I feel like you shouldn't do that, you know, because there are, as much as most fans will hate a certain movie, there's fans who are going to love it too, and then you're like, well, who are you to kind of dictate what the fans of the franchise should love and what should be disavowed, you know. But, you know, it's Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection we're talking about. So if he comes up with something that is just mind-blowing and the perfect ending to the Aliens storyline, and we finally get what we need to have closure and have this work, and, you know, a lot of fans always say, well, Ripley should go to the planet where the aliens originated, and I don't know how the hell you would pull that off. Or how do you craft that, or how you figure out where they came from, or that you even need to do that, because the alien, the creatures, they were nothing more than these parasites that served a very specific function in setting up the fear and the tonality and the thrill element of these films, you know. I don't think that there's something here like, other sci-fi franchises where you can do a lot of world building with certain species. I don't think you would have anything like that here. They're parasites in a way, you know. So how do you even figure out a storyline where you go to the planet where they originated? But I've heard that a lot, that fans want to see that. But let's say he comes up with the ideal way to end it and wrap it all up, and let's see Ripley again, and it makes sense, and she kicks ass, and it's just exciting, and we love it. I wouldn't mind it, actually. I'd be okay with it. That's just me.
Jamie?
I mean, look, I didn't like Alien 3, and I kind of liked Alien Resurrection, actually, but my thing is, like, you guys did it. Like, you made these decisions. You did it. It's done. It's set in stone.
Well, Sigourney did a lot of that, too, because she was always
and she
involved.
did a lot of that.
Yeah,
exactly.
so,
she approved of all this stuff.
Right.
At that point, she had final approval. So it's like, you now can't say, like, well, it didn't really happen. I don't like that kind of attitude. You know, own up to what you've done. I don't like that whatsoever. I think you just need to leave it alone, personally. And this is coming off someone who doesn't like Alien 3 and 4. Well, they should count, because you did them. You invested a fortune in those two movies thinking you could... Look, they're both ballsy ideas, but then again, so were the first two movies. I mean, people forget what a crazy idea how controversial doing a sequel to Alien was. And by the way, we're not going to do it as a horror movie, we're going to do it as an action movie. And it's going to be kind of like a Vietnam War movie. And we're going to, you know, where it's going to be about a mother-daughter love story. How's that going to work?
It worked quite well, actually.
It worked.
So.
You know, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not really crazy about the idea, to be honest.
I can't really disapprove of it myself because it would make me a total hypocrite for a couple of reasons. Number one, on last week's show, we were talking about Spider-Man and, okay, exactly how do you position this and do you want to redo it again and stuff? And I said, well, look, ideally, what I'd be totally game with is this new Spider-Man movie. Let's just basically pretend Spider-Man 1 and 2 exist because they're awesome and remake 3 and make it good this time. That, you know, I thought that might be a good idea. So I can't now say anything to the contrary about this. I'll just wait and see. All I'll say about it is it just feels to me like it's going to be another kind of situation where we as fans have collectively said for years what we would like to happen in this series. Right. One of the things that we said is, yes, we'd love to find out where the space jockey came from. We'd love to find out the origins of the species. No, you wouldn't. You think you do, but
Bingo.
you don't. And then
listen, whatever happens with Alien 5, I doubt I'll be as angry as I was when I left the theater after Prometheus. So
that's a good point. I will say that. I think we're just got a good point there. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think we'll probably come out of it and we'll say, well, it wasn't Prometheus, it wasn't Resurrection. Although Jamie likes Resurrection. First time I've heard that actually, that Jamie liked Resurrection.
Resurrection is, there's a lot of stuff I like in it. You know what I liked about these movies too is whether the movie worked as a whole or it didn't work. They had really interesting filmmakers behind each one of them. You know,
they're individualistic.
Yes, and they're unique and they're individualistic, as you were saying, and each of them have elements that the other one didn't have and that are quite enjoyable. You know, even with Alien Resurrection and Alien 3, which as a whole, as a picture from beginning to end, they're a little disjointed and they just don't work, or conceptually some things are wrong, but they're still compelling to watch. They're still of an era that, unfortunately, as I was telling you before we started recording, you know, there's a lot of things that you see in those movies that is not being done anymore in Hollywood, that hasn't been done in ages. You know, whether we're talking about the craft, the technical skills behind filmmaking, you know, the physicality of how they made, you know, creature films back then. So even if they're not perfect, I still love watching those movies. You know, if they come on and it's playing, or if I'm somewhere and someone's playing the Blu Ray or whatever, I'm still kind of mesmerized by them and I want to watch them, you know, and I don't find myself feeling that way over a lot of the stuff that comes out now that, you know, conceptually doesn't work, you know, but those movies, there's something about the craft behind them that, I don't know, they're just compelling to watch for me.
And say what you will about Alien 3, it wouldn't exist today. They wouldn't make it because they wouldn't allow that ending. In fact, they wouldn't let it let it be as
they wouldn't allow that beginning. Or that middle.
I mean,
You're right.
Yeah, the movie wouldn't exist. You know, I mean, we talk about like, oh boy, if they had made the, was it William Gibson had done a draft, I think, that was like about Hicks and Bishop, like, or the one that was really close to being made with Vincent Ward where they're on a planet.
Yeah, the Wood Planet, which is just insane. You just go, how the hell does that work? How do you hold up that planet? You know,
I'd love to see
floating?
it.
I'd love to see it. You know, I'd love to see it. There's great stuff on the Blu Rays and the quadrilogy that Charlie put together. There's great stuff relating to all that, and there's it's a really beautiful coffee table book that came out a few months ago called Alien: The Archive, I believe. Beautiful stuff in it, just really amazing designs and really great interviews, and it just gives you an idea about all the crazy. It just gives you a look at all the crazy ideas they've considered, you know. And when you look at it, you go, well, a lot of this shit is really gutsy and ballsy, you know?
Yeah.
Whether it worked or it didn't, or whether they changed their mind and they didn't do the Wooden Planet, you know, or the William Gibson techno thriller version, you know? Just, it's very interesting, the development of these films and the groundbreaking nature of a lot of things in them, you know?
The thing that kills it as a watching experience, unfortunately, is that it isn't scary. And without an alien film being scary, especially at that time, you ain't got nothing. And that's the problem I had with Prometheus as well. It's like, I could have forgiven that movie a lot if it was just vaguely chilling.
Well,
and it just sat there like an egg.
Some of the scariness might come to the fact there is no one to root for in Alien 3. You don't like
and
anyone.
It's an oppressive film, you know. It's an uneasy, everything about it is kind of uneasy, but you're right. It's not scary in the traditional sense, but you can say the same thing about Resurrection. Resurrection doesn't have that many scary moments, or moments that you can really consider scary. There's kind of stuff that's kind of...
Dan Hedaya's sideburns in that, they were pretty scary. I remember that.
There's moments. There's like gross out moments.
Yeah, there's gross moments, but nothing really scary, you know.
I only like one thing in that movie. It's the whiskey cube. that he puts on the laser and makes a drink out of. That's pretty cool.
Oh,
I always
yeah,
like
yeah.
that bit. That's cool. That's something I hadn't seen before. That was technology of the future. But apart from that, I just found it kind of boring. But this is what I go back to. It's just like, yes, we've said for years we want armies of aliens on Earth. We want a proper sequel. We never wanted Hicks to die. You think you want this? Let's just wait and see what you get.
Oh, they'll be on Earth in the next one. I think
Absolutely.
that's logical. I think it's the logical point. I mean, the last one ended with them right above Earth. Or in the atmosphere, actually. So
they've been in Earth. They've been on Earth. I mean, look at that horrible AVP Requiem where the fucking alien is running around the shopping mall parking lot. That was just stupid. It was just.
I never saw that one.
Oh well, don't bother. But these creatures, there's a grace to them, and they would instill fear in there. And then the moment you remove them from that and you put them in a freaking shopping mall, running around, or in a diner, it just ruins it. It's like the creature, like you have no respect for that creature anymore. You know. Those films were horrible, by the way. Just terrible. And then another.
But you know what? But that brings up Phil. But you know, Roger, that adds to Phil's point, though. It's like people.
How many fans wanted AVP?
Exactly. People wanted AVP. They begged for it. You know, and they got it.
Yeah.
You know, and they even got Lance Hendrickson in it. You know, for fan approval.
Yeah, that's right. Connective tissue, man. That's how they said.
Isn't Peter Weller in those movies too?
No. Lance Henriksen plays the guy that Bishop is based on, you know, Wayland.
Yes.
The guy who started the company, the corporation, you know.
That was actually my guess on Twitter was like, will they, I mean, I wasn't kidding when I said it. It's like, okay, so they're going to end up mocapping Lance Henriksen into this. Watch.
He probably will.
You know. Give him the CG Botox or whatever. I think there's like a phrase for that. That's what I call it. But
that's the other thing they've got to deal with now. It's the age thing. Now, I'm not saying that any of these actors can't play these parts again, because Sigourney Weaver's still an amazingly beautiful woman to look at on the screen. Michael Biehn's awesome, and they're going to burn his face off anyway. So I don't think it matters what he looks
based on that concept image, this has to take place immediately after Alien, so there's no way in hell. I mean, unless you do it as the missing piece of the storyline, we're gonna fill in the gaps. You know, this is like, I don't know, like it's a prequel to Resurrection and Alien 3, but not really, because if the way that Aliens ends and the way Alien 3 begins, there's not much room there to tell another film. I mean. Do you know what I mean?
No, Roger, I know exactly what's going to happen.
Blomkamp was lying. He was so backpedaling. But like,
there's going to be some fault with the cryo tubes, so they aged a bit.
And they have a detour and they go on a planet and something happens. That's the only way. I mean, I honestly don't know.
Or of course, it was all a dream.
Yeah, that's literally. Well, no, I think the best approach is, I mean, if we're talking about it, the best approach is to just not fucking address it. Just go along with the movie. No, seriously, I mean, that's what Singer does, and that's actually goes back to...
Hey, News, I thought you were dead. Nope.
Well, I mean, that's something that, like, that goes back to Arthur Conan Doyle. I mean, like, his Sherlock Holmes books had the worst continuity, and he just didn't address it. He said, fuck it.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to do it. I mean, look at Days of Future Past. Did anybody question, like, wait, how come Xavier's around? Yes. Wait, Magneto's got his powers? Nobody cared because the movie was good.
I was going to say, that's not true. We had an entire debate about that movie because Gabe couldn't get over the continuity, because the whole movie's about continuity. That was his central argument for why he didn't like it. Now you're trying to change the timeline. It didn't happen. You know.
Oh, totally happened with most people. I'm saying it's like most people, the average movie-going audience, didn't question that.
They felt, you know what, I'm enjoying this, so fuck it, I'm gonna go along.
Exactly.
I don't know, I just feel like the one thing, look, okay, regular people, I grant you, but I certainly feel that the one thing that the fans of science fiction cinema and geek cinema especially care about more than anything is continuity. They want these questions to be answered. That's one of the things that people still get hung about Superman Returns for. That's why they like these Marvel movies so much, because the continuity is so tight. That's why the X-Men series drives them fucking crazy. I don't feel like we're going to get into the same problems with this one. It won't bother me. I'll give it a fair shake, but I know it's going to bother. It's the same thing with Terminator. It's why I don't want to see it, because I don't want to have the conversations about the timeline again.
Well, it's less about continuity with Terminator 5 5 and more about we've been here. I mean, that was our big criticism, was like saying that, oh, we can stop Judgment Day now. It's like, that was what the first 2 movies were about. So how can you say that with a straight face again? You know, that was our issue.
Yeah.
I don't mind continuity. Like, we already knew it was going to be weird and different. I mean, we literally know what happens in Terminator Genesis. We're like, okay, we're good.
I just wonder how the species is going to evolve too. I mean, like, what's the next hook for the species in this one? Is the alien king? Or
I'm
something?
surprised they haven't done that. As a kid, I always had that idea, and was like, I mean, seriously, you know,
Well,
yeah,
you
no,
know
it's
how
terrible.
that's gonna look on screen. I mean, it's just, it's
not good.
It's just the same. You know what I mean? It's like, how do we outdo the last one? How do we outdo the you know, it's like...
It's a big alien with a Burger King crown on his head. It'd be so cute.
It's, you know, it's not the right way to originate a story, but who knows? We may all be proven wrong, and it may be good. And like I said before, I really doubt it'll piss me off as much as Prometheus did. So, and they are gonna make a sequel to Prometheus, apparently. Ridley keeps saying he's gonna do it, and I don't know. So
I believe when I see it. Same thing with Blade Runner 2, sir. I don't think that'll ever get made.
Yeah.
Like, they're saying, oh, we're filming in a year. Like, a year?
So
The
much
fuck?
can happen in a month. You know, imagine
I know.
a year.
Exactly. So I'm like, okay, yeah, sure you will. I mean, like, I'd rather see that director go make one of his own movies again, because he's done some pretty good movies, instead of like, oh, I'm gonna do Blade Runner 2 now. Who asked for that?
Regardless of what happens with Chappie, we definitely think this one's getting made, do we?
This one's, Alien 5, it's gonna get made, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, then.
There's
Yeah,
too much.
especially with
There's way
Sigourney,
too much
getting
that
involved.
the value of that IP address, the IP, is just too big. And getting Weaver back, it's too big. And honestly, the thing that made me believe, oh, this is totally gonna get made is, what does Fox have left? We were talking about what Paramount has left for like this summer off air about MI5. What does what does Fox have? Like, they've got X-Men, which they're clinging to so much. Now they're making Deadpool. They're not making Deadpool because the internet went crazy over that fan footage, that test footage. They always go crazy
scraping
for
the
that
bottom of the barrel, man.
Exactly why they're making it, because it's a part of, oh wait, this can be a part of our X-Men copyright issue or rights issue. So this counts. So we're gonna go ahead and just make it. That's why they're making it. They're not making it because the internet loved the footage. That doesn't matter. That's why they're making it. But what else do they have? They don't have Star Wars anymore. That's gone.
No,
You know, Fantastic Four is not really going to work. I'm not knocking them. I mean, prove me wrong on that one, but no, it's not going to work. What else do they have to fall back on?
I think that's it.
Could make another Alvin and the
Alien.
Chipmunks, and there's Avatar.
Oh
I
yeah,
guess.
they're making another Alvin and the Chipmunks. They have 2 Avatar movies coming out. So no, but you have a good point. They're at a place right now where their slate is looking thin. You know, when it comes to franchise stuff. You know, so they are gonna make. I really strongly I believe that in a couple of years we're gonna see that Alien movie. It's gonna happen.
My guess is by 2017. I mean, we'll get it pretty soon. I think we'll see it in theaters in 2 years.
Just can't wait to see Shelto Copley as the panicky guy who already has an egg in his chest. You know that's happening. You just know that.
I was thinking he was going to be an android, actually, because something flashy involves.
You're right.
You know,
That makes sense.
I could see him as, that's what I'm thinking.
All right. Well, he'll be in it regardless, and that's fine with us. We'll see.
I love Shelton Copley. He's awesome. Like, I don't,
Yeah,
I
great.
loved him in the A-Team. Hey, you talk about, like, Fox not having properties. It's like, A-Team underperformed, but God, couldn't you have just done another one anyway, just for me?
Even direct-to-video.
It was really good. I really liked that A-Team movie. Just do another one,
Well, Roger, with the time that we have left, I mean, let's find out, because we always like to dial in with Roger. He's got a lot of projects on the go all at once. Last time we spoke, I believe, Phoenix Rising was moving ahead. I was still nagging him about Toy Masters, the documentary, all this kind of stuff. Of course, Star Trek The Next Generation, your magnum opus here, is finally completed, and
It's
once
completed.
again, I'd like to shake you
Finally.
thoroughly by the hand for all the amazing effort you've put into that, you and Robert and your entire team. It's been an incredible piece of work that you've put together. So with that behind you, apart from sleep, what else are you doing at the moment?
Well, it's good that Next Gen is completed, because we were doing Next Gen at the same time we released Enterprise on Blu Ray, and we did a couple of single disc releases of TOS episodes. So it was a lot of work, and with TNG we were doing the season sets, and we were doing single discs of the key two-parters, you know. In the first 3 years, we had theatrical events. We had the one-night-only theatrical events, and I was producing additional content for those as well. So, I mean, those 3 years were a lot of work. So, it's good to be done for now, you know, and to get back to, like, as you were saying, Phoenix Rising and Toy Masters. But it feels good because obviously we set out to achieve something very specific and just kind of create the definitive release of the show. And I think we did. You know, we got the last 2 years we got Saturn nominations, and we ended up winning for Best Home Video Release the last 2 years. Saturn nominations just came out yesterday, so we got nominated yet again for Season 7, which is great, to all the way to the end. You know, we got the nominations. I don't think we're going to win this year because, you know, we have Twin Peaks and the Adam West Batman show, both having been restored in high def and released on Blu Ray this year and last year, and they're nominated this year. So I think one of those two is going to win this year, and it'd be selfish of us to say, nah, we should win again, because, you know, we've been recognized for our efforts already, and it's time for someone else. And they're two fantastic sets. Those two Blu Ray collections are just fantastic. But it's good. It's done. We're at the end of the. We've released all of them. They're out there, and fans have loved those, and it's opened up a lot of great opportunities for us, and we're very happy. And now, you know, the first thing I did as soon as we finished Season 7 of Next Gen is I ran into another edit bay to finish Toy Masters, which had, you know, I think I told you that it just kind of stopped. You know, I had to stop in the middle of the post-production of it because I just didn't have the time to be doing all the Star Trek stuff and my other work, and then also finish Toy Masters, which was a movie we were building from something like 100 hours of footage, you know? So it was, I think last time I talked to you guys, I think we had like a 4-hour cut of the movie that we were like, well, how do we pare this thing down to an hour?
You don't. Just give me the 4-hour version.
Well, we did. We actually did, and we're quite happy with it. So, it's finalized, it's done, it's in the hands of a couple of potential distributors right now. We're screening it for another group this Monday, and hopefully they'll like it as well. And it's done. It's a, you know, tight 90-minute film, you know, with a very clear arc. And everything we had to remove, which is a lot of stuff, we've kept. We have these nice bins in the edit system with all the sequences we pulled out. And those are going to be, when we release on Blu-ray or DVD or any kind of digital download, we can throw those on there as special features, you know, additional deleted stuff. We certainly want to get all that stuff out to the fans. But it's done. The movie's now done, and it's in the process of finding a home with a distributor. So I would think that, I mean, I know that by the end of the year it'll be out. You know, we will get it out by the end of the year because it's completed. So. And it's exciting, you know. I think for those who haven't listened to the other episodes I've been joining you for, it's the battle for who created He-Man, you know, and it's very interesting because it explores a very specific era in pop culture with the 80s, with everything that was going on back then, that now we take for granted because now it's all about launching franchises and gigantic marketing campaigns and gigantic, you know, product lines coming out day and date with a movie, you know, that, you know, back then in the 80s, Mattel was one of the early people to actually kind of have that level of success where they were making $700 million a year in sales, you know, of a product line based on their own unique intellectual property, Masters of the Universe. So we track that. We track the launch all the way to the decline. The last year of the line, I think they made $7 million. So it's pretty fascinating because it covers most of the 80s, you know, and it covers everything, the television realm, the cinema realm, the product and licensing and merchandising realm. So it's, and basically the guiding line through all that is my producing partner on the project, Corey Landis, and I just trying to figure out, this was something that we loved so much as kids. And, you know, we know who created Star Wars. We know it's George Lucas's baby. We know where most of the Marvel universe comes from because we know of Stan Lee, you know, but we didn't really know who the hell was responsible for this creation that was so influential to us as kids and that even to this day we still love, you know. So that's kind of the story of the documentary, the journey of Corey and I as we find anyone and everyone who had anything to do with Masters, and we put them on camera. Sometimes we try and put them together to confront one another to say, okay, who really did this and who really did that? Because you guys are saying the same thing, you know. So it's pretty interesting. I think that was the moment where we made a big breakthrough, was when we realized it's kind of our story in a way, because we had so much footage, we didn't know what was the through line, and then we figured out, well, the through line is the reality of how this all came together by the two of us looking for all these people and trying to get them on camera. So that should be the narrative. And when we figured that out, it made perfect sense. It was very easy to determine what stays in the picture and what has to go. So, and that's where we are now. And then we're back on Phoenix Rising, the new Captain Power show. I just had a meeting yesterday with a studio executive who was very interested in the property, and the writers, Judy and Garfield Reeve Stevens, have done a really great script. We did some tweaks and some revisions based on feedback that we've been getting from the networks and the outlets we've met with, and I hope that by the end of this year that's also found a home and we can go and make that show, because we're very excited about it. We got Tim Dunnigan, who was the original Captain Power. He's agreed to come back and play Stuart Gordon Power, which is the father of Jonathan Power, the character you remember from the original. Mm-hmm. We have Todd Masters doing effects. Todd Masters has done everything from the Borg Queen on Star Trek First Contact to Fringe to all the Stargate shows to I think Vampire Diaries, True Blood. You know, he's one of these guys that is still physically creating creatures rather than doing it with CGI. You know, he did the Skitters on Falling Skies. It's also exciting, but you know, I'm sure I'll get back to Star Trek at some point. There's no you can't leave the Star Trek realm once you're involved, you know. And there's so many other great things that we could do down the road with Star Trek that I'm really excited about. So hopefully the next gen Blu Rays keep doing well and they become successful enough that down the road CBS can do an analysis and figure out that it would make sense to do the other shows, you know, DS9 and Voyager in high def, you know. And if that happens, I'll be there, you know, if they'll have me, and I think they'll have me because I think we did a pretty good job with TNG and Enterprise. So I don't think we're done with Star Trek, you know. So that's why I'm really excited about this little period of time now away from Star Trek to do these other things and get them up and running, because I have a feeling that I'll get a call at some point again from CBS to do more Star Trek work.
Star Trek lives. We lost a huge part of it this week, but it does live.
Yeah, the last 2 weeks have been rough, with Leonard passing away last week and now Hart Bennett this week, who, my God, talk about someone who was just instrumental in that resurrection of Star Trek with those films. He and, you know, Nick Meyer. It would have been very different. Who knows if there would have been if Hart Bennett and Nick Meyer hadn't been doing the movies and allowed Star Trek to continue and to reach new audiences, you know?
I don't think it would have existed. I think we'd be talking about this right now.
No, I don't think so.
You know,
I don't think the second wave of that wave of what we call the Rick Berman era, I don't think that would have happened if it hadn't been for Harv basically coming in after the motion picture and making Star Trek 2 in a way that was financially responsible and that also created a film that was beloved by fans and critics. You know, that was the key to everything that came from that point on. You know, what Harv and Nick Meyer did. So, you know, God bless them for that, because I think it would have been a very different franchise without their involvement. You know.
I mean, you can't even say that on some odd chance that some movie exec a couple of years ago would have said, Star Trek, I used to know that show. Let's try and bring it back. Let's try and do a movie, because there's so much of Wrath of Kardin just in the DNA of those movies. So you literally wouldn't even get the movie, the 2009 movie. You wouldn't get anything. And you wouldn't get into Darkness either, and maybe that's a good thing, but
maybe that is a good thing. Maybe that's the only good thing that could have come. But I don't think the quality of genre programming we get now, I don't know if we'd be at this stage right now if it hadn't been for Next Gen breaking that barrier, you know. So that point in time was very important, that kind of early to mid-90s era. And those guys were all there, and I think we did a really good job at helping present a very clear picture of what all that was like for all of them, and for the industry and for fans and for, you know, for everyone involved, you know, if you delve into all the special features we put together. So it was, you know, we were tired. We were just as tired as those guys were by the time they were doing the show in season 7, but it was so special that you just kind of got excited about it all over again. And I think we did great work all the way to the end. So,
man, I'm just thinking, would Phil have got his Daredevil show if it hadn't been for Next Gen? I'm trying to think about the long-running implications of this now. I don't know, but it is time for us to talk about it, actually. So at this point, we will end Classic Movie Moan, and let's go straight to that subject that Phil just can't shut up about, on marveling at the future. Hello everybody and welcome to Marveling at the Future. I'd like to think this is the comic book podcast which is a little less predictable than maybe you'd think it would be. Yes, that new and hopefully final Avengers Age of Ultron trailer has hit, but we're not going to go through the stills, we're not going to analyse it for you and all that stuff. And I tell you, I name no names, but I even saw a show, and by the way, I'm only judging myself here because I clicked on it. But I was watching this show today that was analysing frame by frame that trailer. And there's a shot of just a pedestrian looking at the Quinjet through a window. And just because she has blonde hair, we're trying to immediately draw conclusions. Is that someone important? Is that Carol Danvers? Can we please?
Jesus Christ.
Exactly. So that's why we're not going to do it. No, we're going to move on because we marvel at the future far ahead, the future that we maybe can't see clearly yet. But here we are as your clairvoyants in the Marvel and DC universe. So, joining me is the guy who knows what he's talking about, writer-editor for Superhero Hype and author of Spencer's Soapbox, Mr. Spencer Perry. Hello, sir.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. What's on the soapbox this week?
Today it was about how retconning in movie franchises is not worth the trouble.
I agree. I'm glad you've written it, I must say, because I'm just getting sick, folks, of filmmakers and producers and movie executives who just can't. Best way to put it is, you might be familiar, folks, with the great comic book artist, one of the greats of all time, Steve Ditko. He created this character. Called Mr. A, who was this. It's kind of hard to describe, but his tagline was, "There is good and there is bad, and there is nothing in between." So if you committed the slightest offence, you would be in trouble with Mr. A. He was a bit of a psychopath.
He's kind of like the Shadow.
Well, he was partially the inspiration for Rorschach in Watchmen, if we're to... I don't think it's been publicly admitted, but Alan Moore worships disco, so it's pretty confirmed. But I just like to use that kind of analogy. I don't want to become Mr. A, but I really do want to say to these people, nay, strangle them and say, there is a sequel, or there is a reboot, and there is nothing in between. It's getting to the point where, Blumkamp can't make up his fucking mind about what this new Alien movie is. There's some guy on the Toy Story 4 saying, well, it's not really a continuation of 3. It's called Toy Story 4. I don't know what to do with you people. You're all crazier than we are. It's just nuts. So I'm glad that you wrote that, Spencer. And I'm sure you wrote it in a lot more controlled manner than I am expressing myself right now. I'm very stressed about it. But I tell you what, folks, let's talk about something that will relax me, because I'm feeling good right now. I'm in a good place. Daredevil on Netflix. It's coming very, very soon. And we thought that before the show comes out, we would take this one final chance that we have, not really knowing that much about it, to dream, to project and hope about what we think the show is going to be in the long run. Yes, obviously, right now it's just one season, and then Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist and the Defenders, but sorry about this, folks. I've got to be selfish about this. Fuck those shows. Well, what we're talking about right now is Daredevil the way we want it multiple seasons down the line, because there is so much to do with this character, you can't possibly do it in one season. So we're going to talk about the dream perfect scenario that we want to unfold. Now, before we do that, what we do have to deal with is obviously the show as it exists in its first season, what we're getting right now, what we can glean from the stills, from the articles, from the interviews, and from the trailer. And so far, I got to tell you, Spencer, I don't think they've put a foot wrong. I like everything that I'm seeing. Would you agree with that?
99% agree. Everything I've seen, I'm like, okay, I get it. This is the Daredevil that can exist in the MCU, and this is the kind of, not necessarily adult-oriented, but a little more hardcore comic book that I'm used to reading and I want to see, that I don't think has quite been nailed in terms of a film or a television adaptation. But the thing that gives me pause, and it's only one thing, was in a recent interview, Stephen DeKnight, the executive producer and showrunner for the series, was talking about how Daredevil won't be the one that creates his own costume. And I believe he was referring to the red one, not the one that we've seen in all the photos. And his quote was that Daredevil wouldn't be making it, someone else would make it for him, because he never understood how Daredevil was able to stitch it together and tell the difference between the colors of the fabric. Now, if you've read Daredevil, you know that his radar sense is so finely tuned that he can touch a piece of fabric and tell what color it is. To me, that's literally the only misstep I've heard about Daredevil, and that's it. I wouldn't say that it's a huge misstep, but it's definitely something that makes you scratch your head and wonder, like you read Daredevil before you signed on to do this, right?
Right. Please, you're the one in charge. You do start to panic about it. Well, I understand where we're coming from. To me, it's never been about the costume. I mean, I'm definitely curious, and I feel that one of the things that always, actually in retrospect, confused me about the movie. Now, I like the movie, like I've said many, many times. If you're a long listener to this show, you could bring out a Phil G action figure, and it would say one of 5 phrases, one of which would be, the Daredevil movie got me reading Daredevil comics, because I've said it so many times. But one of the things that did thoroughly confuse me about that movie, and I know that it's not really the filmmaker's fault, but the suit, man, the costume, it was it was all over the place. Like, you see it on the poster, and it looks like, okay, that's the suit from the comics, pretty much. And then you see it in the movie, and it's more like a red leather biker's jacket with a mask. And then also we found out, of course, in some sequences, like the action sequences in the bar where he's trashing up the bar, it is grey. It's not red. You think it's a lighting effect that it looks that way, but no, it was actually grey because the studio was so terrified of using the colour red because Spider-Man had been the movie that came out just before it. All this kind of crazy crap. So I assume that Marvel is going to do what Marvel does best, which is to not worry about the subtleties of adapting a comic book costume for the real world. They're just going to do it, you know. It's going to literally be the costume, and I think it's going to work. But what I've heard so far about Season 1 is, I think, exactly what it needed to be. It was really the presentation that they did at the New York Comic Con when they first had the crew and cast panel, and the first footage shown, that I really got behind it, because I thought, okay, what do I want from Season 1? Well, I don't want them to dilute it with basically the entire history of Daredevil comics. I want Elektra nowhere fucking near this show, not because I don't love her, but because she does not need to be here. I do not want I don't want Bullseye, really, because I want them to, you know, invest in those other villains that Daredevil has. He doesn't have that many, but he does have some good villains. I want to see those first. What I really want to see is the full Daredevil origin story told fully told properly. I want them to use Foggy Nelson properly and develop that history. I want Karen Page brought in properly, and I want them to develop that history with her. I want them to develop the origin and rise to power of the Kingpin, but since it's an origin story for him, you need to bring in another villain just for the colour and variety of it. They're doing that. It's a Kingpin origin story, but we're also getting the Owl, who... That's the Daredevil villain to pick. If you're not going to have Bullseye in the show, you pick the Owl. They picked the Owl. And also, they have Vanessa, the Kingpin's wife, who is such a vitally important character in all the stories. So the fact that they're actually bringing in all of those characters into Season 1 makes me realise that, man, they've got it. This is exactly what I wanted to hear. And on top of that, I'm also very partial not just to Frank Miller's book, The Man Without Fear, which was the definitive Daredevil origin story, but also another take that was done on it back in 2001, I believe, by Jeff Loeb, who is now running the TV division of Marvel, called Daredevil Yellow, which was a slightly lighter book. Daredevil's not known in comic books for its lightness of tone, but what this was specifically how Matt and Foggy, just starting their law practice, got to know and meet their plucky secretary, Karen Page, the woman that Matt fell head over heels in love with. And it's an episodic jaunt, and they meet the Owl, who wants Murdock and Nelson to represent him as a client. That don't work out, and Karen, of course, gets kidnapped by a villain called the Purple Man, and all this kind of stuff happens. And of course, hence the title, he's wearing the yellow suit, which really fits the lightness of the story, because it's really a kind of a sort of a romantic comedy, really, but it provides... I thought you could bring elements of Daredevil Yellow into it, because that would give you... It would give you basically the lightness of touch that's needed in Matt's life, because this is a guy who's, he's going to have a pretty dark origin. He's going to need something in his later life. Now, in the movie, they had the right idea, and that's what Elektra was going to represent, and here... they're going to have Karen to fill that void. It also seems that they're bringing in Karen into the story in a very exciting and dramatic way, that she's basically, you can tell like from one of the stills in the trailer, yes, I've analysed it, that she's going to be implicated in a murder, or she's hovering over a dead body. She's in the wrong place at the wrong time. And as we understand it, that murder is somehow linked to the Kingpin. So I think initially she's brought in to Nelson and Murdock's world because she needs a lawyer. And they are just up-and-coming lawyers, and they need a good case. So they pick up Karen's case, and that's as good a reason to bring her in and introduce her as any. It just feels like they're doing all the right things. I'm pretty excited about it. I just feel like, by the end of this, the Kingpin's going to have become the Kingpin and built his empire. He will have proven himself to have a slight chink in his armour in the fact that he has Vanessa as his wife, this morally ambiguous at times woman, but someone who actually just seemed to be a fully formed human being, not a monster. Daredevil will be fully established. He will have had one of many exciting, colourful battles with the Owl, played by Bob Gunn. Nelson and Murdock will be fully established because they'll won the big case to prove Karen Page's innocence, and Karen and Matt will presumably be in a relationship that will not last very long because Matt's never does. And it seems like that's 13 hours right there. Oh, and not to mention, we haven't even talked about this yet. Fucking Scott Glenn is Stick. I even know he was in it, and then he just shows up as a flash frame in the trailer. Stick, for those of you who don't know, is Matt's trainer when, again, if you've only seen the movie, you'd think he does it all by himself. He just finds a couple of rooftops and, thanks to some Ben Affleck narration, he's Daredevil as a kid even, but no, he gets a mentor in Stick, who is he's such a cool character, but he's such a prick too, especially to Matt as a little kid, but he teaches him everything he needs to know going forward. So that was my little rant there. I mean, am I right here? Or does that sound about right? Am I pretty?
Oh, yeah, like if that's how it all plays out, that will be a very satisfying first season of the series. There's a part of me that still kind of likes the 2003 movie. There's they get a lot of shit wrong, but there are some things that they get right. And like I've said in the past, Daredevil is one of my favorite superheroes, and I just want to see something with him in it that nails the character like the Richard Donner Superman or the Dark Knight or Iron Man. I want to see that for Daredevil, and please just answer my prayers, Phil.
Well, I was going to say, I have one... You had that one slight misgiving about the costume. I had one slight misgiving about that trailer. I hate the cliche of the priest confessional.
Yeah.
I hate it. And it just feels like such an obvious, lazy way to talk about Matt's Catholicism, because this is an integral part of the character, folks. You know, he is one of the few characters in all of Comicton that is really defined by his faith. He's a devout Catholic and yet dresses up as a devil. But there's so many different ways to do it. I mean, first of all, the whole priest confessional thing, that was done in the movie. And that's one thing you don't want to remind people of. I mean, I thought it was fun in the movie, and it is what it is, but it's just wrong. You know, forgive me, Father, for I've sinned. That's pulling it mildly, 007. You know, we've seen that. You know, I don't want to see it. Besides which, I mean, the obvious and you don't have to do this in the first season. I'd have misgivings if they were going to do this, because it feels like that's one layer we don't need right now. But of course, Matt has a mother. His mother left him when he was very young and became a nun, and she was working in the church just down the street, and he never knew it. And he finds out much later in another story, which we'll talk about a little bit. But if you're going to talk about Matt's faith, you're going to do it in a better way than that. So I really, really hope I'm just blowing this tiny little thing out of proportion. I don't know what you feel about that.
I imagine it's going to end up being just one sequence. It's such an important aspect of his character, though, that it's something that they can't... I'd be shocked if it wasn't mentioned, at least in passing, in every episode, but I hope it's not all framed around the confessional sort of thing, because that's such a tired trope.
Daredevil, epilogue. So this week...
Like, if it's the last scene of the final episode, that might bother me a little bit. But if it's like... just kind of thrown in some random episode, I can get over that.
Right, well, that's season 1. We're feeling good. We're feeling confident. And by the way, not to dismiss the other shows that are happening, I understand why they're doing it, and I understand that it's a good idea. I mean, Luke Cage is an important character in Matt Murdock's life. He's shown up in plenty of the stories. There was a time when he even became Daredevil while Matt was in prison. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Oh gosh, that might happen. You never know. We're getting ahead of ourselves. And Jessica Jones and Iron Fist. And of course, with Iron Fist, then you start getting into ninjas. And one of the big villains of Daredevil stories, when they brought in the character of Elektra, Ninja Assassin, was the Hand. And you imagine that Iron Fist will introduce the Hand, and they will be his premier villains. And you imagine that Iron Fist, the show, will also introduce Elektra very teasingly, and then that... And I don't know what's going to happen with the Defenders. I have no concept of that at all. But that would, you would think, Iron Fist in the Hand and a teasing glimpse of Elektra would swing us very nicely into season 2 of Daredevil, which must be the Elektra saga. There is.
Well, and don't forget, just to add, the Jessica Jones show is introducing Purple Man as its primary villain, who is a Daredevil villain. But he interacts with all 4 of those characters in a good way, or at least 3 of them.
Oh, that's great. Anyway, so Elektra Saga has to be season 2. See, what happens, folks, is once you've got a hit, once people love the show, and once you've firmly established it in a way that people aren't thinking in any way about the movie, they've let all those preconceptions go, and now they're treating the show as the show. Think of it very much in the same way that, Buffy the Vampire Slayer eventually became just a show, not a show based off a movie. Think of it in those kind of terms. So when we get into season 2, that's when you can start reintroducing those elements that we're introduced in the movie. This time we can get the definitive Elektra story, and this time we can get the definitive Bullseye. And I loved Colin Farrell, but Bullseye, you can do some... Bullseye, they cast the right guy. Bullseye's going to walk away with this show, and he's going to be the character that everybody loves, and it's going to be great. And now we've got a fully established Kingpin, and really, I'll tell you where I'm coming to this, Spencer, and then you tell me what you think. But the reason that I was... I've had different opinions about the movie over the years, but after I read the Elektra saga, what resonated with it for me was something that the movie did completely differently, because the movie's a boy meets girl story, and you know, it's sort of how she becomes Elektra and stuff. But what the Elektra saga was in the comics was about Matt's first love when he was in college, when he was a teenager, and this wonderful, exotic, wild woman that we'd all love to, you know, entered into his life and made an impression, because your first love is never or rarely your last love, but you never forget it. But he had a painful experience with Elektra, you know. Her father died, she left, he was just literally just abandoned. It was almost like a puppy love kind of thing, because he was young and, you know, naive, and he was in a vulnerable place, and it took him a long time to get over Elektra. And then, just at the point that he has forgotten about her, then she comes back into his life as a ninja assassin that does not recognize him initially, but then, as they encounter each other over many, many violent situations, eventually the ice starts to break a tiny, tiny bit. And yeah, it's not the traditional love story that you would imagine. The whole way I'm reading this Elektra saga, I'm waiting for the conversion moment. I'm waiting for the moment where, you know, he goes to her apartment and she breaks down, and they have that conversation and they say, hey, we'll work this out together. We will fix this. We will take on the bad guys together. It never happens. She goes further and further down the dark path, and eventually she replaces Bullseye as the Kingpin's chief assassin and accepts a contract to assassinate Matt's partner, Foggy Nelson. But before she can pull it off, Bullseye kills her so he can get back his title. And it's such a wonderful, unconventional story, clearly written by Frank Miller, a man who has no love in his heart. That's no concept of cliche love stories, and that's what made him the perfect guy to tell it. There's a reason why it's a saga, folks. It works. It's not my personal favourite story, but it is the most well known. And 13 episodes of that easily. You don't need the Owl, you don't need Stiltman, you don't need Purple Man. Maybe a little bit of the Hand, I don't mind, but just have Kingpin, have Elektra, I'll have Bullseye, and have Karen leave the show very, very early in that season for reasons which we'll explain when we talk about season 3. They have a breakup, and that's it, and that's why it's so important that Elektra comes in, and you can't have Karen in there in the mix as well. That just complicates it too much, and they didn't do that in the books. So have Karen leave season 2 very, very early. She'll be back later. Just have it as Elektra. Am I on the right track with this one?
Oh, definitely. That's better than the season 2 I wrote down on my notes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have given you a chance first. I do apologise.
No, not at all.
No, what was your idea, though? We all want to hear it.
My idea was, since season 1 is all about the rise of Daredevil and the Kingpin, is that season 2 would be about the Owl going off on his own and becoming a rival for the Kingpin, so that it's Matt as Daredevil, fully established in his role as a neighborhood lawyer and also the neighborhood superhero, but then these two warring factions that are about to rip apart his neighborhood of the Kingpin and the Owl. So that was my idea. But I like yours better.
No, that's fine. I mean, hey, 13 episodes, you can do a lot in 13 episodes. You can have it as a special. Christmas special! We'll do that. We'll do that as a Christmas special with the Owl.
That's a great idea. Daredevil Christmas special.
With special guests B. Arthur and Jefferson Starship. Yes, absolutely. Well, folks, season 3. Now, of course, we complete the Miller-Lovin trilogy, as it were, because season 3, of course, must be the all-time classic Daredevil story, Born Again. And this is about something that has been escalating and brewing for a long, long time. This is about two characters who we've been following on polar opposite paths, Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. And they're both on a path to destroy each other. But Kingpin's just never had the weapon to do it. And again, this is one of the genius parts of Miller's writing, is that he's able to take something so simple and so, even at the time, overused, the reveal of the secret identity, but have the angle be something so utterly unexpected, especially for the time. In this particular case, Karen Page has moved to Hollywood to be an actress, to be a star. As we meet her in the story, she is she's in a bit of trouble. She's a wastrel, she's a drug addict, she's a prostitute, and she is hopelessly addicted. And so, because she has no money, she sells the only thing that she has left of value in order for a quick fix: the true identity of Daredevil. And immediately, what I'd love about that is that if they spend the whole of season 1 making us fall in love with Karen Page, which is obviously, if you don't, I guess the show doesn't really work, so I really hope that they do.
Well, and with Deborah Ann Woll playing Karen Page, that won't be hard.
The signs are good, I will agree with that. But at the same time, in the opening minutes for season 3, you see something like that, immediately after all they've been through and however many times Matt's going to save her ass in the show, and then in 5 minutes of season 3, she just sells him out just like that. True enough, she's not even thinking straight, but still, the audience would turn on her, and then for the rest of the season, they're going to have to, start earn respect back. The character's going to have to earn our respect back, much the same as for Matt. So, with that information in hand, and it's one of my favourite bits of the Kingpin. He's on a yacht, and he gets the information because of the way his infrastructure works. This is Kingpin at the height of his powers. He has, this cellular structure where basically one guy passes it to one guy, who passes it to another guy, who passes it to 12 other guys, who then pass it to the Kingpin on his yacht. The Kingpin gets the information and says, kill anyone who's touched this envelope, and they all get terminated. And then he says, now I will test the information. And he starts in a very, very effective way that really, really, ties into all our paranoia and fears. He breaks down and destroys Matt Murdock's life in the most wonderful, relatable way. The banks start foreclosing on Matt. He owes payments to the banks that, as far as he knew, he didn't. But all of a sudden, his accounts are frozen. He literally can't do anything. His law practice is being sued, I believe. His law practice gets blown up shortly thereafter. He can't keep his apartment. Not that he had a fancy apartment to begin with, but very soon he is reduced to that kind of place that Tom Hanks lives in Big. When he first goes to New York, it's that kind of place, and then very shortly after that to the slums. And there's a wonderful visual trick in the issues that every one that opens, it starts with Matt in the fetal position, either in a comfy bed initially, but then in a slum apartment, then in the streets, and then eventually in the church where his mother is a nun who rescues him when he's at his lowest ebb, literally brought down to nothing. And the revelation, in a very, very subtle way, that he's finally found his mother, which is one of the moments which I love most in all Daredevil history, which is, when you bring a character down to nothing like that, which it so brilliantly does, and then you give the character just that tiniest gleam of hope, that tiniest gleam of, hey, it's going to be alright, and the audience gets a breather from the unrelenting horror of what's happening in our hero's life. It's just wonderful. And what's best of all about that story is he's barely in the costume. It's not about that. It's really not about that at all. It's about a man, not about a superhero, and yet everyone agrees it's the best Daredevil story of all time. And by the end of it, I've never been a fan of the ending so much because it goes really comic booky. It involves a team up with Captain America. That ain't going to happen in the show. And they fight this terrorist called Nuke, who's this steroid pumped up, Arnold clone. And just because they managed to find out that Nuke was hired by the Kingpin, and he's caused several $1 million worth of real estate damage in this action climax, the Kingpin gets exposed. Not fully as a criminal mastermind, but certainly his public reputation is destroyed. I'm picturing something a lot more dramatic here, where, not that he dies, but he is exposed as the Kingpin, and he has to retire. He has to go away, and he leaves New York almost for good at the end of season 3, and Daredevil does get back together with Karen. She does redeem herself, and at the end, life is good. We get a happy ending. If the show ended there, you would be happy. I've got other plans, but still, you know, it would be a good way to. It would be a good way if you thought of it as a trilogy. That would be a good way to end it. Daredevil Born Again. Again, 13 episodes. Easy. You happy with that, Spencer?
Oh, definitely. I think in that description of what you want to see, you've encapsulated why Daredevil is such a great character and does things that can't be done in any of the other Marvel movies. Is that when things get down for Matt Murdock, he very seldom is able to get back up. He gets knocked down even further than he was before. And that's what's so interesting, is that you can tell stories with Daredevil that you can't tell with Iron Man. Like, if Tony Stark loses his money, he's gonna get it back. And going to Captain America, he loses Bucky, his best friend. Bucky comes back, he's bad, but then Bucky's good again. So that's why Daredevil works. And when you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, man, the Coen brothers are never going to make a superhero movie, but if they did, Daredevil would be perfect for their style of, holy shit, how can this get any worse?
No, that's right. That's absolutely right. Well, I think here's where opinions might start to veer off, because I haven't talked to Spencer about you know, what I hoped for seasons 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Oh, let me say what my season 3 was.
Of course you are, yes.
Yes. It was, so 2 was all about Kingpin versus Owl, and 3, in the wake of both of them kind of losing and Daredevil being triumphant, it would be about other sort of costumed villains making their way into Hell's Kitchen, and then the seeds of the Hand being planted and emerging in Hell's Kitchen. So you would see Stuntmaster, Stiltman, The Spot, all kind of sort of one-and-done episodes, and then peppered throughout them be preparing for the Hand, which would be the big hunk of the last couple of episodes is Matt fighting off ninjas in New York, which is something that I just have to see before I die.
Now, you want full Hand, like the Hand of these ninja warriors, that when you kill them they turn into mist, like they literally just dissolve and turn into mist, and it's all a bit crazy, and it blurs the line somewhat between, you know, is this supposed to be real? I mean, I was really believing in reality, and now you're bringing in melting ninjas. I don't know what's going on. So you want full on Hand?
I think maybe if like
that sounded so weird. Full on. Sorry.
I think maybe if 1 or 2 of them did the mist trick, that would provide ample enough mystique about the group as a whole that you don't have to have every single one poof.
Well, okay. Season 4. Now we have been veering off so far, but I think we're really going to veer off here. We've not talked about this before, but I had an experience once with a Daredevil story. I mean, I started with the Elektra saga, and then I read Born Again, and then I read a book which I started reading it on a train ride. It was I used to work very far away from home, and it was a 90-minute commute, so it gave me a lot of time to read my comic books. And this one thing, I had my 90-minute journey on the way to work, my 90-minute journey on the way back, and I devoured this whole book in one go, and I didn't regret it. It was one of the most gripping comics I've ever read, which was Daredevil, Guardian Devil, written by Kevin Smith. I fucking love this story, and it would please me so much if they made that season 4 of Daredevil. It's a slightly crazy story, folks. Basically, I will not spoil a lot of it for you, but what we're dealing with in this particular situation, and why it would follow on so nicely from season 3, is that Karen is initially with Matt, but then they split up again. Karen has her reasons for it, which I will not dare spoil here. But, you know, she has a rough time of it. She's always had a rough time of it, as has Matt. Well, Matt's life gets a lot more complicated when a child, a baby, an infant, is basically dumped on his doorstep. And then a mysterious figure, this kind of clairvoyant chap who knows the secret identity of Daredevil somehow, but also tells Matt Murdock, this child is the Antichrist, and you must destroy it, you must kill it. And then all of a sudden Matt starts going crazy, because everything that this clairvoyant predicts starts to happen. Everything starts coming true, and what initially seemed ridiculous starts in his own losing it mind start to make more sense. Maybe he's right. Maybe this child is the spawn of evil. I'm a devout Catholic. I have a devotion to not only uphold my faith, but also protect the weak and the innocent, do everything I do as a superhero. And how can I possibly let the Antichrist live? So it gets to a point where Matt is literally about to kill this baby. And we, as readers, start saying, I don't know if I can root for you anymore. You're losing it, man. Come back to us, Matt. Come back to us, Matt. Black Widow makes a cameo where, you know, she almost, you know, has to basically beat the shit out of Matt just to keep the child safe and snap him back to reality. And by the end of it, of course, as you would expect, many twists and turns. Things are not as they appear. This has all been a grand ruse, a grand scheme to trick Matt and make him self-destruct by a villain who I will not spoil the identity of. All I will say is that it wouldn't have seemed possible for this villain to show up in a Marvel Studios production a month ago. Now, it is possible. I'll also...
Perhaps we talked about him in the last episode.
Maybe. It's Jamie. But anyway, I mean, the whole point is that by the end of it, one character certainly is gone from the series forever. One of the reoccurring characters, and it's, you know, and like Spencer was saying, these characters do not come back. And also, it's just a wonderful story that rarely gives you the opportunity to tackle just one aspect of this character, his faith. And I mean, that's what I'd like. I mean, you want to just touch on it briefly, which you would in the other seasons, fine. In season 4, tackle it head on, do Guardian Devil. And maybe it's not enough for a whole season of 13. Maybe we could do some other things. Spencer, what would you like to see, just that, or would you like some other things too?
I don't know what else you could put in there to for a season 4 of Daredevil. I think that's a great idea.
Happy with that? Good.
But my only worry is that it's the kind of story that Marvel Entertainment would be like, can we do that? Like, can we do a story where he's like hunting this kid that he thinks is the Antichrist?
Well,
I'd love to see it. Don't know if it's something that they're even remotely considering.
But they did it though. I mean, they did do it. I mean, it'd just be the silliest logic of all. I'd just be holding a copy of the book and said, "You published this. It's yours. How could you say no?" And of course, obviously, you know, for people who aren't familiar with the show, you release a promo image and it's, you know, Daredevil with the baby, and you immediately go, "I'm out." No, you've thrown a fucking kid in this show. I'm not interested in. That's a risk that they would definitely. But that's what I'm interested in for season 4. Season 5. Now it's time to get into one of the most greatest comic tenures there's ever been, and one of the main influences on the show and its tone, which you can see so clearly in the tone, in the style, in the mood, in the colour palette of just what we've seen in the trailer, which is the Bendis run of Daredevil. Now, we're talking about, I mean, this... I couldn't do this all in one commute on a train, but man, I couldn't put this one down either. This is where, again, we're talking about something very, very initially cliche, which is that Daredevil's true identity is revealed, but it's revealed to everybody. It's revealed in the newspapers, and then Bendis really gets into what does that mean for an average Joe, for a workaholic superhero who's really just a mortal man and who has a normal income. What does that mean? What are the long-running implications? He covers it all in this absolutely epic story. It starts with the apparent death and assassination of the Kingpin as rival gangs start to move in. By the way, I should point that out. I said Kingpin would be in exile by the end of season 3. He would not be in season 4 because there's no room for him and he doesn't need to be there. He'd be back for season 5. Initially, he's moved out of the way, maybe by the Owl, we could have that. And then he gradually climbs back up the power ranks. But all through this, it's really about a guy who... he's just getting... it's Matt Murdock, what can we say? He's just getting torn down again. We're just talking about a guy who now cannot at least hide to anybody behind his anonymity. And it just takes its toll. And every relationship... I mean, as silly as it sounds, Foggy Nelson, his trusted best friend, his law partner, up until this moment, he didn't know. He had no idea what was going on. And now he does, and you can imagine how that affects their relationship. They've been through a lot together, but it's going to be severely tested. And then, not going to even get into what happens where... maybe this is treading familiar ground, but it works so brilliantly. Matt meets another love of his life, Mila Donovan, a blind lady who he saves from getting hit by a truck, which is, mirrors the situation... Exactly. Mirrors the situation that happened with his own life when he was a kid and he almost got hit by the radioactive waste. Well, he saves Mila, and again, with everything falling about him, he finds love and compassion and gets together with a lady. And this is the thing where this is one of those stories where, everything seems like it's going to be alright, but it ends in the most unconventional way. This I will have to spoil so I can talk about season 6, which is that eventually Daredevil... There's still a lot of debate throughout the run about, is he really? Is he really? I mean, because it's wonderful because, there's no definitive proof. It's leaked in a newspaper article, but nobody really knows. The press hound Matt Murdock, but nobody can actually definitively prove it. No one has a shot of him putting on the suit. It seems self-evident that he is Daredevil, but there's no definitive concrete evidence. So the public's debating it and stuff, but the FBI, by the end of the run, definitely has proof. And he ends up in jail. But the Kingpin goes with him. And they both end up at Rikers Island, and that's how the show ends. That's how season 5 will end, with both of these caged animals stuck in a close confinement space. What's gonna happen next? That's how the comic ends. That's how the season's gotta end. There's no doubt about it. And this is one of the reasons why, when they announced Daredevil as a show, we all slapped our heads, because when you read a run like that, you are reading a season of a show. I guess the only downside is there's maybe too much material in that to cover just one season, but heck, expand the run, make it 24 episodes rather than 13, I don't give a shit, just do it, and do it well. Spencer?
Oh man, that would be such a heartbreaking cliffhanger to leave viewers on, but you're right, it's the perfect way to bookend the season, especially a lot of shows tend to wrap up around 5, and if you don't officially say, oh, season 6 of Daredevil is coming out next, you just say, oh, here's the season finale, and then Daredevil's in prison. Yeah, I want this show to run as long as it can anyway, but it would be great if it ran long enough that we got to the material of him in prison, and that lends another thing to a type of story that Marvel hasn't told. I mean, they did it in the Hail to the King one shot, but that's not the same as having a hero in prison, which is a dynamic that you see pop up a lot in comic books, but hasn't really been explored in any, except Watchmen for 10 minutes. But even then, you can't consider Rorschach a superhero.
No.
Yeah,
it's always from the perspective of, I mean, it might have been done before, I'm trying to remember, but it's always from the perspective of, I'm here because I want to be here.
Yeah.
You're all locked in here with me, all that kind of thing. So it would be different. And of course, what a hook, because of course Spencer knows in the next run that happened in the comics after that, taken over by Ed Brubaker, which I went into with skepticism because it was like, oh man, what a run. What a run. The next one's going to suck. It didn't. Brubaker's run was fantastic. It was as good a follow-up as you could possibly imagine, going in with realistic expectations that was not going to be as good as the Bendis run. And it starts, of course, with Matt getting out of prison. And who busts him out? Frank Castle, the Punisher. So if they're going to do a Punisher show, you could start it right there. You could kick off the character right there. Be totally happy with that. But in season 6, really, there's a lot going on. But the primary focus is again the most heartbreaking thing. Look, if you're a woman, just don't cross the other side of the street when you see Matt Murdock coming. Don't look in his eyes. Don't fall for him. Don't fall in love. He'll destroy your life. He won't mean to, but he will destroy your life, and that's exactly what happens to Mila Donovan. Their relationship's been tested by the fact that Matt's ended up in jail, but he's come back. And then, again, another villain comes up by the name of Mr. Fear, who delivers one of the most just heartbreaking, horrible, evil plans to destroy a character's life. Again, you're sensing a theme here. This happens a lot, but who the hell cares? In this particular case, he manages to turn Mila Donovan into at least a temporary clinical psychopath who accidentally murders a man and then ends up in a psych ward. And then Matt's all alone again. And that's cool. That's fun. So that happens, and that really defined Brubaker's run. And it just feels like if they really get it right, Daredevil's going to be a show that is defined in a lot of ways by its, not just its enjoyment, but it's like, man, I just want to slip my wrists after I watch this. It's like Game of Thrones in that way. You're not going to sit up off the couch after you've seen it. You're going to literally have to be picked up off the couch because someone's just punched you in the balls with the tragicness and the pathos of it all. And that's going to happen in season 6. And as much I kept reading, but it doesn't have a happy ending really. They don't repair the damage. Mila's parents basically fight Matt for custody of her, and eventually Matt willingly signs a divorce with Mila. They do get married, and he never sees her again, and he willingly does it so that she can basically have some kind of a life, because he knows that it's all his fault, even though it's not really his fault, but it is his fault. You get the idea. And again,
she may or may not appear in Mark Waid's Daredevil. Just saying. Did you mention like an antagonist for that season, or is it more of? Would you consider that more of like a character focused piece?
Well, it's, Mr. Fear, obviously,
Mr. Fear,
responsible for the Mila Donovan thing, but it could do with some more. I like the fact that you've built a rogues gallery. I'll happily see them all. I just want to make sure that Spot is not responsible for Mila's...
Oh, no. But he needs to be in there.
Of course, absolutely, yeah. God damn you, Stilt Man! Damn you to hell! No, that's not. I don't see that. And then, of course, we've got season 7, which we've talked about before. It's End of Days. I'm going to let Spencer take this one, because Spencer got me reading it. Tell us about End of Days. Tell us about the book, and tell us whether this show and the last season should be a direct translation, or whether we should end with a little bit more hope, and then maybe a happy ending for this character.
Well, End of Days is... it's sort of the Dark Knight Returns of the Daredevil stories. It's the last Daredevil story in that in the very first issue, it's probably the first 4, 5, 6 pages, Daredevil dies. He gets killed in the streets in a fight with Bullseye, which, thinking about all of the seasons you just laid out, that's the only way Daredevil's gonna die. He's gonna die in a fight. He's not gonna die in his bed, surrounded by all the people that he loves, and a bright light comes out, and then he reaches out and goes to heaven. He's gonna die violently, brutally, and sad. It's gonna be tragic. And the entire series is framed around Ben Urich, the news reporter for the Daily Bugle, who will be in season 1 of the Daredevil Netflix series, and I don't recall if Ben is present for when Daredevil dies, or if it's someone else that's there. But Daredevil says his dying breath, his last word, which is Mapone, and the whole series is about figuring out what that word means. And it takes Ben on a trip through this future Marvel universe where it's not future like 2099 future. It's an alternate future where Frank Castle is in prison and is like strapped to a chair so that he can't even move. So there's no risk of him escaping. And then Elektra has abandoned her ninja ways and is like a soccer mom, but is still fully aware, cognizant of everything she's did and has done, and is still a capable ninja if the occasion arose. And it's all about finding out what this word means, and then in the end we find out that Mapone was the child of Daredevil and Elektra, and Mapone takes on the mantle of Daredevil at the end, and I think it works. I think it could work as a season of a television show in that it really ends the story in a way that, okay, Matt Murdock's story himself was never going to end happily, but Daredevil as a hero and a character, there's that glimmer of hope where at the end you realize that Daredevil is still around. It may not be Matt under the hood, but it's someone. But I don't think that it could work as a direct translation. I think, and going back to something that you don't like, I think you need to utilize the flashback a little bit in that story, just because you can't have Charlie Cox be in the first episode only to kill him off. I think if you're going to have a Daredevil show, the guy that's been playing Daredevil for 6 seasons needs to still be in it a little bit. And in that way, you can enhance the story so that, sure, the mystery of Mapone is still at the center, but maybe you can clue the audience in a little bit more about the mystery, maybe add more questions that weren't even present in the original text by including flashbacks of what happened post-season 6, but before what we're seeing in End of Days.
That's what's going to define it, and it will have a positive ending. It just won't have a happy ending. There's a difference, but yeah, I'm absolutely fine with that. And it's going to be so interesting to just, for the general public who don't know what they're getting in for, to see how they react to that. Finales are always tricky. You love them or you hate them, and I know there's going to be people who, if we go with that ending, they're going to hate it. On principle, they're going to hate it, but that's all the better for it, as long as we can debate about it. And we, us two here, we can tell you why it has to be that way, and it does have to be that way. As long as they kill Bullseye, as long as they give Bullseye the best death ever. I can't even remember, did they do that in End of Days? I don't think they do.
I'm pretty sure that they both die in that fight. I could be wrong. I haven't read it since it came out, which was like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe longer. I don't even remember. But I'm pretty sure that Bullseye dies. As an aside, Brian Michael Bendis, who wrote Daredevil End of Days, has already confirmed that a Punisher End of Days is coming eventually.
Oh my God. The blood's going to be on your fingertips, folks. That's going to be the bloodiest thing ever. I can't wait. Cannot wait for that. Right. Well, that's it, folks. I mean, hopefully you're a believer. I mean, I don't know, Spencer. I just feel like I am a grown man. I'm 30. Honestly, I know I don't act like it, but I am. I'm 31, and I don't act this way for anything these days. Like, if Star Wars sucks, it's not going to end my world. If Avengers Age of Ultron sucks, it's not going to end my world. I'm absolutely fine. I don't invest in these things anymore. I get excited about them, but I get excited when reviews come out and I start to really get into it. The only exception right now in my life is this thing. This thing has to work. It has to be great, but I just don't wonder if it can ever be as good as we have it in our heads, because it is one of those characters that means a lot to people, and it means different things to different people, and we've all got a different version of this show in our heads. We've just proven it right here, but I don't know. I do feel very personal about it. I do feel like I know it sounds so stupid and petulant, but I do feel like if they don't follow my run, I'm not going to like it. It's not my thing, you know. I just feel like it's laid out so perfectly, and it's just because the books gave that gift to me, and maybe too it was the order that I read them. I read Electra Saga, and then I read Born Again, and then I read Guardian Devil, and I read the others after that and stuff, and it unfolded very naturally, and I could see the joins, and I could see how you could make that a real solid continuity in a show, and man, I just want it so much. But tell me, Spencer, should I just calm down a bit? I don't know. How are you feeling?
I'm with you in that, and it's what I do for a living that has done this to me, in that, if, like you said, if Star Wars sucks, I won't care. If Avengers sucks, I'll be disappointed, but I don't think it won't send my world crashing and burning down to the ground, but Daredevil, like you, Phil, we're brothers here, in that Daredevil means so much to me that if the Netflix series doesn't work, I'm going to be heartbroken, because it's different from the Avengers movies, not in that we've been waiting for Age of Ultron since the first Avengers came out. We've had 3 years of stories about who's going to be in it and what's going to happen, and then we've had posters and trailers and TV spots and set photos and official photos and magazine spread photos. But we haven't had all that with Daredevil, except for all our years of reading the comic and building it up in our head and what it means to us. And even then, when Avengers comes, it's going to be like 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 20. Daredevil is 13 hours worth of stuff, and if it's 13 hours of garbage, that's so much worse than 2.5 hours. Oh, this is something we haven't talked about. My boss and I have been talking internally about trying to get me one of these advanced copies of the first episode or first two, whatever they end up doing. What do you how do you feel about me getting that?
I knew that was the question you were trying to ask me. I feel very happy about it. Honestly, I do.
Say it. Feel, but I'm gonna watch it.
No, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. No. It's Daredevil is your guy. He's one of your top 3, and I feel it's only appropriate that you should abuse your power to get the jump on the rest of us. That's absolutely fine. Besides which, I mean, if you're in that position, you're also in the position to either tell me, dude, you had nothing to worry about, or dude, be afraid. Be very afraid. But I'm feeling very confident. I mean, I have to say, for me, the bit that really worked in the trailer for me was the bits where, it's the bit that the trailer really builds up to, is that he's walking down that corridor in that tenement block, and he puts his ear to the door, and we can't really hear it, but of course we as fans, we know the character and his powers at that point, so God only knows what he's hearing, and he's slightly hesitant. He knows it's a bad idea to go through that door. I'm going through that door, you know. And that's our guy. He's our hero. It doesn't matter what the hell's going on behind that door. It could be 20 guys raping a woman. It could be anything unbelievably seedy and grotesque, which it would be in Matt Murdock's world. I don't throw those terms around lightly. We're dealing with a situation. We're in Hell's Kitchen. That's where it takes place. And it works for me. It works for me completely. Oh man. Jesus, just don't fucking suck, okay? Just seriously, get the cost.
That's so much to ask, Mark.
Really? Come on, seriously. Okay, folks. Well, because it's true. What Spencer says. It's also the fact that if this fails, that's it. You know, he ain't showing up again. It's not like Hulk where they can say, okay, that movie didn't do so well, we'll still put him in Avengers. It's not going to be like that for Daredevil. And it almost feels like it can't fail anyway, because it's like, you know, he's like the first foundation for something that they're building here. You know, it has to work so the other shows can work and be successful. So I don't think it can afford to fail, but I certainly I can't wait. I cannot wait. It's a month away, folks. We will cover it in some way. Still not sure how. It depends how. I don't know. Let's just watch the flipping thing first, however early we get it. We were going to talk about some other stuff, but, as I kind of predicted as we were talking here, Daredevil easily filled up the show, so we won't. We will move on, but Spencer, there's no one else in the world I would rather talk about my favourite comic book character with. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm happy to have been a part of this.
I am too. You better...
Like Matt Murdock, who's not happy ever.
No. You better send me a download link, you son of a bitch. Don't you rat out on me. Okay, folks, so we'll be back, same marveling at the time? Same marveling at the future. Oh, I fucked that up completely. Never mind. You know what? It's Daredevil, folks. I'm excited. We'll see you next time. Bye. And folks, it's now time, as I promised you, for the return of a cinematic happy comfort food. I'm very, very happy to tell you that one of the most successful shows that we've ever done, crazily to me, is the retrospective piece we did on Ridley Scott's Legend. And I had to think about it, and I thought, well, if I picked a cinematic happy comfort food myself, I think that one would make as good a case as any. Yes, a complicated film, or films, of course. A flawed film, certainly. Two completely different films, technically, or three, if you go into all the different versions. And we talked about it a couple of years ago, 2012 actually, and we compared those different versions. And when I did that particular show, yeah, it was the old days of YouTube. They weren't in the high definition phase yet. So I looked at it and I thought, well, people like that show, but I'm embarrassed by the quality, especially on a movie that looks that good. I've got to set this right. So I did. We've remade that show, and now I feel like we can go back in time and we can revisit myself back in the year 2012, Jamie back in the year 2012, and even our good friend Queen Christina was with us for that show. So we're going to take you right back to the past right now as we remake, redo, reimagine that show, and we talk about Ridley Scott's Legend. Anyone that knows me knows that I have a particular fondness for the niche sword and sorcery / fantasy epic adventure movies that took particular prominence for about half a decade, from the early 1980s to the mid 1980s. Now the film that I've picked this week could be at once called the last dying gasp of that genre, released as it was in technically Christmas 85 in Europe and January 86 in the US. And if you discount Willow, of course, made a few years later, and I like to. At the same time, it's completely unique and separate from all its relatives. For all of those other films, be they Conan, Krull, Deathstalker, Ladyhawk, The Sword and the Sorcerer, even Your Hunter of the Future, regardless of their budget or their quality, they arrived on the screen as they were always intended to be, completely unmolested. And our film this week, Ridley Scott's Legend, was released theatrically both in the US and Europe in two completely different versions, followed about 20 years later by a final official director's cut on DVD. Now, when I say there are three official studio and director sanctioned versions of this film lying about, I am talking different practically on a Superman 2 scale. I mean, the different versions of Legend are completely different films. You look at them on the surface and it seems like, how can that be? It's the same story, it's the same look, it's the same footage, right? Well, there are a lot of elements which come into play regarding how different the versions are. In fact, if I were to teach a film studies class and, I was to show you an example to the students of the power of film editing, I'd choose this film.
And in order to discuss it with you tonight, we do have to talk about the different versions and the differences between them. But there are other reasons to choose Legend for me. Being a Ridley Scott film, of course, there is so much more to talk about here visually and thematically than there would be with anything else in the genre. It's also one of the prominent films of my childhood, one that I remember above most, and features one particular character that I found so terrifying as a child that he invaded most of my nightmares and cemented himself to me as my personal favourite movie villain of all time. The story of Legend, and actually we're getting into the differences right here because in the US version, they use the oldest trick in the book and they give you an opening narration scroll which flat out tells you what the story is. The director's cut just starts the damn movie. Now the story takes place in a completely undefined magical time, land and place, totally detached from any sort of logical or historical context, as any classic fairy tale story should be. The story starts when the fair Princess Lily, played by Mia Sara, who every day escapes from her boring life at court to visit this magical forest where one of her suitors, but the only one she seems to care for, Jack, played by Tom Cruise, lives. A boy truly one at nature. He knows every inch of the forest, he talks to the animals, he's friends with the other creatures that live there like the elves and the fairies, and he also knows the rules of the place, and one of them is to never touch the unicorns, the most sacred of animals, who hold the power of light itself. But he's a naive chump who gets easily seduced by Lily and will do anything to please her. So, Jack takes Lily to see the unicorns, unaware that the forces of darkness are ready to make their move against the unicorns, and they just need some foolish mortals to show them where the steeds are. So when one of the two unicorns in the forest is hunted down and has its horn, known as an alicorn, hacked off, which throws the forest and seemingly the world, although we're not quite sure, into perpetual winter and night. All the Lord of Darkness, played with bedwetting awesomeness by Tim Curry, needs to do is kill the other unicorn, and then sunlight will be extinguished forever, allowing him to leave the confines of his lair and, all together now, take over the world. Now, here's where we get into the differences again. In the director's cut, it's clear that the first unicorn has been killed and can't come back, and all our heroes can do now is make sure that the last unicorn doesn't end up the same way. In the US cut, again, because you people can't cope with unhappy endings, all they need to do is get the alicorn back and reattach it to the unicorn's head, and it'll bring it back to life. Regardless, anyway, Jack allies himself with the other magical creatures of the land to go on a quest into Darkness's lair to rescue the last unicorn, and Princess Lily as well, who the Lord of Darkness now fancies will make a good wife for him.
I mean, Curry is great, but I mean, Mia Sara is the movie, in my opinion. That's the character, as any really good story. It's like, you know, a character has to go through a change, and she's the one who goes through the change of the movie. She starts off, nice, sweet, innocent, not innocent, but young with a little bit of an edge, and she kind of knows how to play Jack's emotions, and she loves him, but she knows how to get what she wants, and she knows how to get what she wants out of Darkness in order to get to the ending of this movie.
With Jack and Lily, you truly have an Adam and Eve situation. Now, I always thought it was odd how, with the exception of that farmer's wife Lily meets at the start, there isn't a single other human being in the story. And I've always wondered if the film would have gained anything by showing us a little of Lily's world that she escapes from, that we're only told about and can only imagine with the boring...
She's either a lady or a princess, depending on which version you're watching.
One of your visits is always a pleasure.
A royal visit's always a pleasure.
It's time you started behaving like the lady you are.
It's time you started behaving like the princess you are.
True enough. Well, for argument's sake, we're going to say she's a princess because we've all seen the director's cut. But the whole point of the story, to me, is that Jack and Lily should feel like the only two people in the world, like Adam and Eve. They've been put down on this earth, this magical land. They've been given the entire world to themselves, with no expectation of them except that they respect its laws. And like any flawed human being, they fuck it up. They fuck up paradise for themselves. Jack wants to be sure he can get Lily's love, so he tries to buy it by giving her everything she wants, and she knows it, and showing her the unicorns. In itself, showing her the unicorns is forbidden, it's implied. And Lily, even seeing them isn't enough for her. She wants to touch them. And in the moment that she does, you're seeing the beginnings of her corruption, the beginnings of her journey. And as you say, it's Lily's story. She has the journey. Her one sin turns the world to darkness, and she sets about putting it right. But once she actually confronts darkness, his logic is very plain. This whole mess is your fault. You can't set it right. Your soul is not as pure as you thought. You have an evil seed inside you. It will do you better to just embrace it and stay with me rather than go back to your old life and pretend this never happened. And I actually thought about it only just as I was rewatching it. Maybe I'm looking at this too deeply, but there's actually a wonderful Catholic allegory going on here, because obviously the idea of original sin, as Catholicism has it, is that we're all born on this earth sinful because of what Adam and Eve did, and this is Legend's world's version of that, the birth of original sin.
Well, it's certainly the Adam and Eve thing, because you see the U.S. theatrical version, and it's funny, again, you see the big differences. If you see the director's cut, it's just kind of they don't really do anything, but they're clearly in love with each other, but in a doughy-eyed kind of Walt Disney way. You see the U.S. version, and it flat out tells you they fuck in the woods. It does.
That's why I love talking about these things with you, Jamie. I mean, you just say things that Ridley Scott wouldn't say on the director's cut. See this bit here? They're fucking in the woods. That's what they're doing.
It's true, though. It tells you to your face, like, she goes to the woods to get laid.
Like I say, this whole Catholic thing, maybe I'm stretching it too far, but I think that the film would reverberate for any kid brought up in a Catholic school who was taught by a strict nun. Or Christian maybe, but especially Catholic, because in that type of situation you are told that if you commit another sin, you'll be sent straight to hell. And that's exactly what happens to these characters. They make one mistake and they go to hell. It's weird how it works that way. I think that the greatest strength of the film is that it beautifully shows the purest expressions of light and good with the forest and the unicorns and young love, and certainly the purest expression of evil. They don't call him Satan in the film, but that's what he is.
Yeah.
And Ridley Scott doesn't fall into what I think would be a trap of other filmmakers, perhaps, of trying to create a hell that went against people's expectations. No. We imagine hell, certainly as children, exactly as it is, exactly as Ridley Scott makes it in this film. It's a huge underground type cavernous place with pits of fire all around, and the devil is the scariest thing you have ever seen. I have delayed this for far too long. Let us talk about Darkness himself. Of all the characters in the film, he is the least damaged by the different versions. Most of his scenes remain intact across all of the different cuts. As such, people who've seen the film always comment that he's the most memorable character. It's not entirely fair to say that in some ways, and in some ways it is. I'd like to think that he wasn't cut so much because even the filmmakers in the studio knew, regardless of whatever other problems the film seemed to have, Tim Curry's performance is not one of them. First of all, I think it is hands down the best makeup job and the best makeup performance I have ever seen. They talk about in the making of the great Rob Bottin, one of the best in the biz, especially at that time in the 80s, was called on to create a character that would be made up head to toe completely in makeup and prosthetics, which is quite rare, obviously, for reasons of time and money. But there isn't a single shot in this film, if you look at it, where they're cheating us with Darkness, or with any of the other makeup performances, really. There isn't a single bit where he's just wearing a Head and Shoulders piece and right out of frame he's wearing a t-shirt. No, he's fully in it the whole time. And
just one thing real quick there. There are certain shots, though, it's not Tim Curry, it's a guy in a mask.
Sure enough.
I mean, that's noticeable. Like the particular shot where he has flames come out of his fingers, that's so not Tim Curry.
I have to say, even though I had issues with the film, Darkness is the only thing in this film that I had no problem with whatsoever. He's pretty much the only reason to watch this movie, and like you said about the makeup, I was really, really impressed by his performance, because having been a fan of Guillermo del Toro for a long time, I've seen a lot of movies like Hellboy and Pan's Labyrinth and watched the behind-the-scenes stuff on the DVDs where they talk about process of putting makeup on these people and how difficult it is to emote through all of that rubber and makeup and latex and contacts and effects work and all of that. And for this performance to come across as naturally as it does, considering the fact that he looks so absurd with those huge horns coming out of his head and the teeth and the contacts and all of this, for it to feel so natural and so right, it's a real testament to Tim Curry's abilities as an actor that I like that character so much, and that the makeup did not distract me. I mean, the first time I looked at him, I thought, what the hell is this? But after 10 seconds, you completely forget that he's wearing makeup, and that's just him.
It's so much better in the director's cut, where we don't see darkness until like 40 minutes into the movie. Like that scene where the head goblin, Blix, comes in and they go over the plan and you only see his hand. Mm-hmm. And like you see the US version, and he's basking in what appears to be the rays of a blue moon, and his eyes are glowing and his fingers are glowing, and it's like, it's creepy, but it kind of takes away from the like, holy shit, when he shows up in about an hour into the movie.
I have mixed feelings about that. You're absolutely right. It is very interesting in the different versions how he is introduced. As far as his appearance, he has this sort of dark grey skin. At first, I thought it was just a lighting effect, but I'm wondering if the idea might be that he's been stuck in exile so long and has been powerless for so long that his skin has actually turned grey, like the sun and light is slowly killing him. Maybe. I'm not quite sure. It's interesting. But anyway, we know what he looks like, as you say. So his big entrance later coming out the mirror. It's still cool, actually, because first of all, it's a great entrance. But secondly, we see him finally in his proper red form. And we get a full body shot of him in that shot.
Yeah. When he kneels over to pick her up, like we see his hoofs or whatever you want to call it.
Getting back to the actual performance, I mean, I think it's a transformative performance. I mean, look, never mind Tim Curry today, but let's just take a look at a film he made fairly close to Legend, Clue, where he played the butler. Now, do this at home, kids. Take a look at Clue. Take a look at regular 80s Tim Curry and that, with his funny face and his quiffy hair and his great comic timing, and then look at Legend. Dear God, can you even fathom that it's the same guy? And I can't even imagine how hard it must have been to deliver a performance in that. As Christina says, every possible handicap is put on Tim Curry in this film. He's covered head to toe in prosthetics. He has these ginormous horns attached to his head, which, as light as they were, they might have made him a little dizzy. He's got false teeth in his mouth for those Dracula fangs. He's got contact lenses, which reportedly were very painful. And because Darkness is a proper satire character, he's got goat hooves. And they put the guy on fucking stilts as well. So he can't see, he can't walk, his mouth is full of false teeth, he probably can't hear too well in all of that, and yet we get the performance we get. And I would argue that it's the definitive performance of his career, actually, not Rocky Horror, because Curry spent most of his career, certainly after this film, playing bad guys on film and television. Countless Saturday morning cartoon bad guys. It took, I think, the Wild Thornberrys for someone to cast him as a good guy again. I guess then, yeah, we can move on to the score now. If you want an example of how important that single element is to a film, look no further than Legend. The film was initially scored by Jerry Goldsmith, who gave the film a very lush, high romance flavour. Too much so, Ridley Scott felt at the time, so replaced it for the US version with our old friends Tangerine Dream, who, as you would imagine, just did something completely different, much darker, more electronic, more the style of movies at the time, and it's just weird to me how that one element made the US version seem to be a darker film. And I'll tell you an interesting story about that just quickly. As I've said, I grew up with the US version. I eventually there was one Christmas day where apparently Legend was playing on TV, and I thought, cool, I want to watch some Legend today with the family. We watched it, and the first time I was watching the European version with the completely different score. And my initial instinct as a kid was to say, the fuck is this? This isn't Legend. This is horrible. Because it's just a completely different tone. The score just makes, because if the darker it is, the cooler it is for a kid, right? You know, you don't care about it being lush and romantic. You don't care about the sweetness of it. You want it to be dark and cool. So, and also, I'm a kid of the 80s, so yeah, I like my electronic synth scores sometimes when they work. And I actually think that the score works by Tangerine Dream better at some point in the film than Goldsmith's score. Jerry shines when showing us the light of the world, the romance, the innocence, the beauty. That's where his strength has always been. By his own admission in interviews, that's what he likes to do. He likes to do lush. But I agree with Ridley that at times it's too sweet. There's no particular dark, evil music for the villains or for hell. Now, some will argue, well, do you really want the music to ram down your throat? These people are evil. Under normal circumstances, maybe not. But when it's the fucking devil, yes, absolutely, it should be as dark as it possibly can. Perfect example, in the opening where Blix the Goblin is walking through the forest to the evil tree, Goldsmith doesn't play music for him that tells us that he's evil. It's more subtle. It's more, ooh, who is this mysterious creature? With Tangerine Dream, though, you get this deep synth rumble, and you know this guy is bad news. The character is identified musically. Tangerine Dream do a better job musically conveying the threat of the goblins, like when they chase after Lily, like when she's in the house, and then all of a sudden you get this sting and they show up and like, holy shit, hide, you're a terrible danger.
But the music, I mean, not even just the music, Phil, before we get to that in a second, but the songs and the riddles are all, you know, it's like, again, the distinction with a fairy tale to which the fairy tale adventure film to what the US version is, and they're missing songs. Like, she sings in the movie. It's very much like their influences there of the Walt Disney cartoons, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and whatnot, Cinderella. The riddles aren't there. So funny, like they miss all that stuff. That stuff is great. I mean, like the Lost Fairy Dance sequence, which that's all that stuff that makes it so distinct and interesting. It's just completely bulldozered over. It's an example of the terrible editing of the U.S. version. Is the scene where he first meets Gump, and
Gump immediately forgives him, and he says, "Oh, if it's remember he says,
I did it for Lily. I did it for love." Oh,
love,
really? All right.
Love. That's another matter, and they just immediately forgive him. And
More booze.
It's very bad cutting. And it's much better in the director's cut where he has to pay a price for that. They're like, hey, this is our world too, you fucked up, and hey, she's a human, so she doesn't know better. You're worse because you're a human, but you're a forest kid too, so you know better.
Mm-hmm.
And it showed the menace of the Gump character. He's pretty creepy. But what's the other thing? It's like, he says, how did you know my name? Well, Gump doesn't say his name in the U.S. version. It's just some very bad editing in that movie.
It's heartbreaking to watch some of it. In retrospect, I mean, I grew up with the US version, which is weird, really. You'd think I'd grown up with the European,
the European version, which is 94 minutes.
It's not true. No, the version that they showed on TV was the US version. To me, that was the only... I didn't know anything about the making of the film. To me, that was the film. And obviously, I mean... I loved it. I still can't detach myself from the nostalgia of it. I mean, there's things that I prefer, actually, in the theatrical version. And I know I'm not alone. I've talked to friends over the years that feel the same way. But, hey, it probably is nostalgia, and you can't detach yourself from it. Regardless, there are some things when you watch the director's cut and then you look back, and some of it's heartbreaking because you know how much effort went into crafting these scenes. And they're essentially discarded. And I think the perfect prime example of that is the Meg Mucklebone scene, where Jack crosses the swamp into Darkness's lair, but encounters this disgusting sea witch who lives down there and wants to eat him. Now, it's a great scene to watch because, first of all, like Darkness, the makeup is amazing and, again, transformative. But it's also an important scene because it's Jack's first test of heroism to overcome. And in the director's cut, it's not a test of strength or steel, even though he's just got himself a big sword. It's a test of wits. Jack delays Meg from eating him because he compliments her on how beautiful she is, and she succumbs to her vanity. It's a ridiculous scene, really. And in theatrical cut, she literally pops up, says, "I'm gonna eat ya," and he smacks her with a sword, and it's over.
What a fine fat boy you are, Jack.
You don't really mean to eat me, do you, ma'am?
Oh, indeed I do!
Yes, but that would be a shame because someone as fair and lovely as yourself, Miss Meg, deserves far better than scrawny me. Don't you think?
Yeah. Think me fair? Do you, Jack?
All the heavenly angels must envy your beauty.
What a fine meal you'll make. Be the rest of you as sweet as your tongue.
Wait! Fill your soul with loveliness. Feast on the beauty of your reflection. You are an angel, Miss Meg. Look. Look.
What a splendid idea. Clever boy. What a fine fat boy you are, Jack.
You don't really mean to eat me, do you, ma'am?
Oh, indeed I
I did it.
Bullshit!
But I think the biggest impact is on the ending of the film. Now, in the US and the European, actually, the good guys win, the dead unicorn is brought back to life, and Jack and Lily run off into the sunset, presumably to get married. Maybe at Hare Kingdom, although I can't see Jack fitting in, really, but that seems to be the implication. The big surprise to fans of the film, seeing the director's cut for the first time, was how different that plays. Lily awakes from her little coma, thinking everything was a dream, And Jack says nothing to dissuade her from that, although it is implied, I think, that she knows it wasn't a dream, and I can't...
She figures it out.
If there was a Legend 2, I mean, I think the opening scene would be in here in therapy. I'm sure of it, through everything she's been through. But regardless, Lily matures and realises her journey is complete, and realises she can't take Jack as her husband and back into her world. Just by being who she is, she brought death and destruction to the forest. So they part ways, I think, in a very melancholy way. I mean, she says she'll come back and visit him again tomorrow. But there's a feeling left to me that they won't have that happily ever after that they have in the other versions, and it's a much more appropriate ending, because if we're sticking with the Adam and Eve theme, this is their version of being kicked out of paradise, the realization they can't be together in the way that they like. If it's a proper fairy tale, if it's a morality tale, there has to be a price that's paid. You can't just retcon everything and set everything back to the way it was, as the theatrical version does. And what's more, there's a very weird thing that happens in the last shot, which is that they run off into the sunset, and then we cut back to darkness, laughing, implying that he's not dead at all. And now I'm kind of partial to that ending, actually, for a couple of reasons. Not just because darkness rules and I don't want him dead, but also, if you think about it, the film is about the balance between light and dark and the struggle to maintain it. Now, when the film starts, light and dark are very much in balance. Then things tip over to the dark side, obviously. Then the heroes win and vanquish darkness. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but if they've killed the devil and the world now only contains light, hasn't that fucked up the balance just as much? It makes more sense to me that they've only won this battle and that things reset right to the way that they were at the start of the film. Light prevails, but darkness is back in his hole, plotting his next return to power. You can't kill him. In fact, that whole death speech he has before he's sucked out into oblivion is all about that. You know what?
It does make it a little bit more sense with that shot. Well, he doesn't even give the whole speech, so that's the problem. Well, they cut the shit out of that too. Yeah. It's like if he had given the whole speech and then they show the last shot, the movie, it still would have been like, what? But it would have been like, okay, you can go back and analyze it. The whole speech he gives to Jack right before Jack cuts his arms off makes a little more sense about what you're getting at, which is true.
I think the main part of everything that we've talked about is that while I love it with a passion, it is flawed, and there's no preferred cuts for me of the film. They both have their pros and their cons, and I will fight passionately for each one. The preferred cut is the one that only ever existed on paper and was never fully realised at the time, and I think it's one of the purest expressions live action I've ever seen of a classical fairy tale. We've seen a lot of live action adaptations of fairy tales, but so many of them seem to feel the need to put things in a modern context or give it some kind of kick-ass action kind of flavour. I mean, we're looking at these two Snow White remakes that are on the way, and at least one of them looks like it's going to be fucking Excalibur or something like that. But with this, no, it's a pure expression of a Grimm's fairy tale. It's a morality play, and it's one of the best examples I can think of it. Even if you don't think much of it once you've seen it, I don't think you will regret having seen Legend. So please do check it out. But check out all three versions just for me. And then tell me in the comment section how much you love Darkness.
Yes. Please.
We've run out of time. Me and Jamie have been desperate for the last couple of weeks to talk about Electric Boogaloo, the wild story of canon films. We finally saw it. We've seen that documentary. We've been wanting to tell you about it because it delivers. It really does. It's fantastic. And it really taught me so much about canon films. I was only familiar really with their action movies, with the Chuck Norris films. I had no idea about all the other crazy crap that they made. And
Lambada, the movie.
Lambada, The Last American Virgin, the best type.
I didn't want to. Yeah, Phil thinks like Last American Virgin. Like, oh, that sounds funny. I'm like, no. Roger's seen it. He knows what I'm talking about. Like, no.
That's a depressing movie.
It is devastating. It is so. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's an abortion in there somewhere. That's all I know about it, really.
Yeah,
well, that helps, but I mean,
that was the tagline. The Last American Virgin. There's an abortion.
There's an abortion in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and that's a happy movie.
That's true. That's true. Anyway, folks, I mean, hopefully next week we'll get to talk about it. Maybe I'll have even seen that movie by then, and maybe we could talk about it. Maybe Jamie and I will do a commentary. I don't know. It might.
That will not be a cinematic comfort food ever. Cinematic comfort food. I'm gonna look at you strangely. I was at work the other day and we were talking about I Spit on Your Grave, and they were like, "Yeah, I saw it. I saw the old one. It was great." And I'm like, "I gotta go. I'm out." Oof.
Anyway, it's time to wrap up at this point anyway, because we like to keep these shows tight 2 hours. Roger, where can we find you right now on the interwebs, Twitter-wise, Facebook-wise, all that jazz?
I'm on Twitter, Facebook. I think you can find me on Twitter. I think it's Roger Lay Jr. 1980, because some guy, when I went and tried to get my Twitter account going, someone had Roger Lay Jr. already. I don't know who, because I don't know. I thought I was the only one, but so I think I'm Roger Lay Jr. 1980. I'm also on Facebook, so you can just find me, Google me, and I'm out there. It's I don't tweet as often as I should. I'm not like Rob Burnett, who tweets 55 times a day. I should do it more often, and I'm going to. Now that I have a little more time, post all the Star Trek mayhem, I'll get on that. But I'm out there. You can find me. Shouldn't be that difficult.
He's always around. And Jamie, where can we find you?
Oh, you know where to find me.
Right here.
Exactly.
That's right. Right here, every week, on the week. It's Movie Moan 2015. We'll be back, same Movie Moan time, same Movie Moan channel next time. What's coming out soon? Oh yeah, Chappie.
Cinderella's coming out next week, and that's going to be huge.
I can't promise we'll review either one of those, to be honest. It's not really our cup of tea, but that would be an interesting review, certainly. Maybe we will. Are you going to see it, do you think?
If I have time to, sure. I mean, look, I'm not a prone to, I won't watch it, the girls movie. I'm like, no, if it looks good, man, I'm going to watch it. I don't have that attitude. My sister one time looked at me funny when I said I wanted to see Magic Mike. She goes, why would you want to watch that? I'm like, I don't know, the director's really good. I like the actors. Like, why the hell not?
Well, I still love that story you told me, a year ago or however long it was that movie came out, where you with your best male friend, and you just both said, "Let's go see Frozen. Let's do it." It just literally
we did.
Out that day.
We saw it the night it opened. Yeah, we saw it the night it opened, and we loved it.
Maybe we will see Cinderella, folks. We'll leave you in anticipation about that. But until we return, you take care of yourselves. May the balcony forever remain open.